welcome to all of the participants. I think we're all aware of the health and wellbeing challenges within the legal profession, but there's much that employers can do and are doing to support their employees, and hence why we're here today. So what I'd like to do is, before I come to some of the great work that many of the employers that are present here today are doing, I'd like to invite all of the panelists to introduce themselves. I'd like to share your personal experiences of what has led you to championing wellbeing within your respective workplaces. So if I can go to Charlotte first, please. Charlotte Thornton-Smith.
Hi everyone, afternoon, good to see you all here today. My name is Charlotte Thornton-Smith. I'm a corporate partner at Harrison Clark Rickaby's. I also head the Worcester office of HCR and jointly head Northampton. I'm actually here in Northampton office today. So I wear a number of hats in the firm, and we'll come on to the wellbeing part later. But just to pick up on Nisha's question of why wellbeing is of interest to me, and those from HCR on here will perhaps know this background, but in May 2012, so 10 years ago now, I lost my mum very suddenly. I had a 5-month-old baby in my arms at the time. I'd just gone back to work. At that time I was a corporate partner. And again, for those of you who know corporate, it's pretty relentless in terms of the transactional nature and late nights that we keep. And we all thrive on, actually, but I was thrown into a situation, a set of circumstances at that time. My mum was my principal carer for my father, who was also unwell. And in fact, he died the following year, December 2013. So in short, I had a rough few years and I found it a very challenging time in my life. And I was in a situation where I didn't really know what to do, and I didn't really know who to talk to. I didn't want to be a burden on anyone, not my family and not my colleagues, not my clients. And it manifested in a couple of panic attacks that I had, and I'd never experienced anything like this before. But that was a bit of a wake-up call. And what it also showed me was that a couple of colleagues within the firm that I was very close to pointed me in the direction of our helpline that we had at work at the time. And following those panic episodes that I had, I contacted the helpline, and I really realised and appreciated firsthand, and 10 years on, looking back now, it's every year that's gone by, I've realised it all the more, having those supportive colleagues around me and having the place to go for some support and help was just what I needed. And I worked my way through that period in my life. And so that's why wellbeing is so important to me, and what's driven the initiatives that we're now implementing. And I'm very proud that we've implemented within HCR.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Charlotte, and thank you for being so refreshingly honest and candid. If I may come to you, Wendy, next.
Yep, hello everyone. I am the head of DEI and emerging talent at Squire Patton Boggs, working with Stephanie. I think my introduction to this sort of concept of well-being really came through the work that we're doing in DEI, as one of our pillars is very much focusing on sort of mental health. And I think that as part of my emerging talent role as well, I've started to realise how important this is, particularly for the next generation that's coming through. You know, these conversations about well-being have become really front and centre, and very much, you know, what people are very interested in finding out about. How do we support people in the firm? I think personally for me, I mean, I've always struggled myself with mental health and depression. My husband suffers a lot with anxiety. I've gone through quite a lot of ups and downs with him over the years. And then, interesting, Charlotte, you know, your story, I think wellbeing really hit for me this year when my father died, and I really, for the first time in my life, actually stopped and felt the feelings and rolled with it, and actually realised just how important your own well-being is. So I think if I can help support people that are going through all of these different life stages and life changes, and looking at how we can support through policies and through upskilling people and education, and Nisha with the learning and development side of things as well. I think that's really critical. So my perspective is very much, because it's very much aligned to the role that I do, but similarly personally, I want to make a difference for other people that find themselves in different situations as well.
Well, thank you so much, Mandy, for sharing. David, may I come to you, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nisha. My name's Dave Moorcroft. I've got the grand title of being the High Sheriff of the West Midlands this year, which is quite different, but it's really relevant because it's the year of the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. And I used to be an athlete, and I won a couple of Commonwealth Games gold medals, which was great. I'm going to show off, but then bring reality in. In 2 days' time, it'll be 40 years. 40 years ago, I broke the world record for the 5,000 meters, which was great. But that was a time when I think I was, my ambition bordered on obsession. And I think this is why well-being is so relevant to my life now, but kind of to the person I've become. So I go forward 2 years after breaking the world record, and my worst experience in athletics, but the most powerful experience I've ever had, was finishing last in the Olympic Games in Los Angeles by a long way. And inevitably I had an injury and all the usual excuses. But essentially at that time, because I was borderline obsessive, and because I thought my purpose in life was to win medals or whatever, I actually used the words in my mind like tragedy and disaster. And it was almost like a bereavement, and it was so out of proportion. But I then had about 6 or 9 months when I wasn't able to run, and I had to ultimately go to Germany for an operation. But in those 6 or 9 months, I realized that actually my purpose wasn't to be a fast runner or break a world record. That was an ambition, but it was only part of my life. It was much more than that. And the small run I did on my own at the Memorial Park in Coventry, about 9 months after I broke the world record, and it's about half a mile, but it was one of the most enjoyable runs I've ever had. But it kind of awakened my desire to realize that I did this running lark, not to be a world record holder, but because it added to the enjoyment, fulfillment, happiness, healthiness of my life. And I think sometimes we're sucked into a world of ambition and obsession without realizing what the consequences. And that line about, I can't remember who said it, but it said very few people on their deathbed say, I wish I'd spent more time at work. And the other line that I think is really relevant is, and I don't know who it was who said it, but he said 2 of the most important days in your life are the day that you're born and the day you discover why. And actually, I think it was coming last in the Olympic Games in Los Angeles was the day I discovered why I was born and what my purpose was. And it wasn't the years that preceded that, it was the years that followed that. So I think this is so important.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Discovering your purpose, and you're right that when we are on our deathbed, we're going to think about much more than do we wish we could have worked harder. Thank you for sharing that. Chris, may I come to you, please?
Yep, of course. Hi everyone. I'm Chris Harvey, the Learning and Development Manager at DWF. Been here it'll be 6 years in October, believe it or not, after a career in banking before that, so at RBS and the Court Bank as well. My journey into wellbeing's quite an interesting one. I mean, obviously I'm an L&D person, I'm a trainer by trade, so absolutely have that passion of education, awareness, helping people understand the importance of this, helping line managers understand the importance of supporting their people and having meaningful conversations with their people. But I think what really hit it home for me from my own personal experiences was, I suppose, little things that were probably more, they were happening to me, but I didn't realize the impact that they were really having on me. So I'll be really honest with you all, I'm 34. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at the age of 27, which is rare, very rare, to be someone so young with that. High blood pressure, problems with my eyes start happening. It's relatively controlled. Yes, I take medication. I've been overweight for the vast majority of my life. And last year I got COVID in November and I was hospitalized at the age of 33. I wasn't on a ventilator, but still being dependent on an oxygen mask in hospital with COVID. And I know it's a story that we hear so often. We've heard, and lost people through that terrible thing that's been part of our lives for the last 2.5 years. But that gave me that encouragement to do something. And I've lost 3 stone since I came out of hospital, which for me is a huge achievement that I've never achieved before. But so that sort of physical well-being is really, really important to me. And actually the things that we're doing in DWF now to support people with that more so is something that I'm really proud of. So that's me.
Oh, that's amazing, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Bill, if I may come to you next.
Thanks, Nisa. Yes, you may. So, Bill Barton. God, you feel a bit of a fraud when you listen to all that. I know Stephanie from when I used to be a law student. Set up our own law firm 16 years ago. So, what's my relevance to all this? Well, I'm not ready to die yet. I was very lucky that one of my first bosses, Frances Kirkham, took a great deal of care in her junior staff, and she imbued in me from the very beginning that as solicitors, certainly my generation, it was a case of work, get on with it, don't complain, do the work. And if you're working all hours and weekends, frankly, really cared. Frances was different, and so she encouraged me, and that's something I've always believed in, looking after the health and well-being of your team. I can't do anything about the rest of the firms. I was a partner at DLA, so I can speak about DLA with some degree. But for me, making sure my team was always happy. So I've always said to all of my staff over the years, look, I don't expect you to come in every day and be happy and smiling, because it's work. If you was like that, doesn't happen. But if you can't come in the most majority of days and have a laugh, you're in the wrong job and you should leave. And actually, I think a lot of firms, and not criticism as such, companies, I'm not talking about law firms, have only recently begun to think of mental health of their staff because it's impacted on the bottom line and because of claim culture and the rest. Whereas I think most of you on the call have all come to it from their own ways, and it's a longer term thing. People shouldn't need to be told to look after people. You shouldn't need to be told to smile. You shouldn't, all these things, but people now have to be. It's a very sad, crushing indictment. Having your own practice, looking after your staff obviously has financial implications, but I want my staff to go home and actually feel happy. I want them, if they're out and about, to talk in a positive way about my firm. So I want to be honest in the sense of the health and well-being of your staff, obviously, as a two-pronged thing. I want to care about them individually, but I have also a duty to my company to grow. But it's also about the way that you can support people, and then you never know what people are going through, And I think I've got twin boys, both at university. One had a really tough time. He had to retake one of his years because he basically had a mental breakdown. And I think that Trish and I think we're, reasonably normal human beings, and that we're, reasonably supportive as parents. And our view was, if that can happen to one of our sons, who's, you sort of tick boxes, what's happening to all the other people out there who don't necessarily have that support? And so we'd actually already started supporting Mind in Bradford about 3 years ago. And so we're now a big supporter of them, because they support a wealth of initiatives and support services for people. And we encourage all our staff to do something, get off their bottoms, and actually support a local charity. And so I suppose for me, this is important, to look at people's stories and look at ways that you can move away from to me, people's health and well-being being a regimented by rote job that is run by people in companies, because each of you who run that role, it's like, why the hell are you having to do it? Because there's hundreds of people, they should be doing it naturally. And that's, I think, what is lacking, isn't it? It's actually lacking people coming to each of you individually and saying, what could we do? And law partners aren't very good, especially older ones. So I'm all encouraging for people. We in this firm, I encourage everybody. You've got to, if you're upset with someone, you've got to say, but vocalizing things, and that equally helps people if they have a problem to hopefully come and chat to you, because you've got to feel able. You've got to feel open door policy isn't enough, is it? You've got to actually know that people, if they come in and say to you, look, I've got a problem, you're not going to go, oh, bloody hell, or, not you, or what the, it's like, fine. And I'll finish with one of our staff, her mother's been seriously ill, and so she's been pretty much off work for 2-3 months, and we've supported her through that because we want to do that. But equally, we want to support her because I want to retain her as part of our firm. That has a knock-on effect. So I suppose I'm saying we shouldn't be embarrassed by the fact that there's a conflation of reasons for doing things. You shouldn't feel embarrassed the fact that you want to help people, but it also has, a corporate business element to it.
Thank you for sharing that, Bill. And you're absolutely right. You never know what people are going through, and building rapport and building those relationships with your teams directly is so important. And last but not least, if I may come to Donna.
Thank you, Nisha. And can I just say thank you to Stephanie and the team for inviting me along to this event. It just makes my heart sing when law societies, law firms put together these events for this topic. It's something I'm super passionate about. So thank you, Stephanie. My name's Donna Smith. I am the Burn Bright coach for lawyers. I help lawyers of all stages. My passion is junior lawyers, I've got to say, but I help lawyers take their well-being and development as seriously as they take the law. And what makes me different from other coaches and trainers in this area is that I'm a former lawyer myself. So I have been there and definitely got that t-shirt. Now, my passion about well-being comes from my own challenges with burnout over the years. And in the Masterclass section, I will share a bit more about my burnout story with you. Needless to say, my own experience really gave me the kick up the butt, if you'll excuse the pun, to take burnout seriously. I used to think burnout was one of those things that just meant people were tired and they needed to take a couple of days off. That is not the case. So now I'm on a mission to make Burn Bright the norm in the legal profession. And I just want to say something that's super cliched, but I think needs saying. If we're not at our best, we cannot show up, we cannot serve others, we cannot make a positive difference in the way that we want to. So that's all I want to say for now. It's great to be here, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Donna. It's good to have you, and looking forward to your session on self-sabotage in 30 minutes time. Chris, if I may come to you for the first question, and also we have prepared some questions for the panelists, but if you'd like to ask your own questions, please put them in the chat group and we will come to them and we'll pose those questions. If you've got a question for a specific panelist, just put who your question is aimed at, please, in the chat function. Thank you. So Chris, as my fellow L&D colleague, we do support well-being and the delivery of sort of well-being initiatives within the firm, but being in learning and development, it can be quite a challenge in getting support for these initiatives and getting them off the ground. How did you get the initiative off the ground, and how did you gain support at DWF?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing for us was we obviously we had things in place. We had things like an employee assistance program, which was great and served a purpose, but we didn't have that wider wellbeing strategy in place at all. And it's relatively new for us. It was one of the things that we started up as part, during the pandemic. So that there was an extra challenge for us, as well as of trying to engage a global business in this as well. And one of the first things that we did there was actually set up our wellbeing committee, our steering group committee. So it was kind of spearheaded by our CEO of Connected Services, Jason Ford. So he is still to this day the exec sponsor that we have for our steering group. And then it was around finding the right people. So, like I say, my role in there is from a learning and development perspective. We've got people from Reward who can look at the benefits element to well-being. We've got HR professionals in there. We've got partners from across the business as well, a couple of location heads. So we've got a real mixed bag of people that all have that one thing in common, though, and that one thing in common is that passion for well-being, and the education of it within DWF. And you're right, it is difficult to get things off the ground, especially where everybody was working remotely, and like I say, we've got this global business dynamic that we're trying to think about as well. I suppose one of my tips for that was absolutely around a really good comms plan and lots of visibility. I'm sure we are no different like other businesses. You have some form of intranet, more than likely, with things all over the place in there. And for us, it was about pulling together all the good things that we already were doing, but bringing them together into one place. And I say, I don't mind sharing this, but we categorized our strategy around 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars are mental health, lifestyle, physical health, and work environment. So then what we could do then as part of our marketing and our campaign around this is start to use that same language, and actually it feels like it's hanging off something, as opposed to just, oh look, there's another article on the intranet page about well-being that doesn't really mean very much.
That's super. Thank you so much. And if I can come to you, Charlotte, as well. So as Harrison Clark Rickaby's executive sponsor, what were some of the challenges that you faced in gaining support for getting the Wellbeing Initiative off the ground?
Yeah, thanks, Nisha. I think firstly, totally agree with what Chris just said, and our programme, although it's slightly different, works around similar things. I think some of the barriers initially we faced were perhaps getting people on board with it, getting people to open up, and I realised I actually had probably quite an important role in doing that. And it's not something we do comfortably, is it? Just as lawyers, I don't know, we're not very good at opening up generally. And I just felt, no one needed to know, my whole history, but I think having that senior person in the organisation actually speaking out about it, giving it the true importance it deserves, was very important. So I think that was a barrier. The second thing is perhaps preconceptions. It's all about mental health, as has been said already. I'm also very passionate that well-being isn't just about mental health. It could be financial well-being as well as physical well-being, and often just promoting healthy habits, as I like to term it. And that can come in all different ways. And we have themes. So managing change was something we had, much in the way Chris has described his pillars. Managing change was a theme. We then promoted our wellbeing activities from that, and stretching your comfort zone was another one we did earlier this year, as well as a couple of more physical challenges that we're going to be running firm-wide, because getting the engagement was, I'd say, another barrier across all 11 offices. And previously, the wellbeing initiatives have been very much led by someone like myself and a couple of other equivalents in other offices, and those offices were off doing, great things, and quite randomly, really running their own programs. And we wanted to get consistency. so that all officers could have the opportunity, or people based in all offices could have the opportunity to get involved. So those were a few of the barriers that we had to overcome, Nisha, in implementing our strategy.
Lovely, thank you, Charlotte. And Wendy, if I may come to you, we've had a question come in, and I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot, but Zach has put, participation in wellbeing events is the key, as often those that need it most don't attend. Do you A, identify with that statement, and B, what might be some of the things that you're doing at Squires?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Zach, that you've raised. It's like a lot of the work that I do is that the people that often need your help and support the most are the ones that you're not able to get to. And I think we've often had that sort of anecdotal feedback that people say, I'd love to attend a wellbeing session, but I'm too busy. I've got so much going on that I can't make the time to attend that wellbeing session. So I think the way we've addressed that is by trying to make it as accessible as possible to people, to be able to look at resources. We've got a wellbeing hub on our intranet where we store all of our kind of support and guidance. Like many of the people on the call have said already, we sort of split ours into different pillars so that people can look at things that are related to perhaps their family, to their finances, their career, and then their health as well. So we've tried to signpost people to those sites. We also run a lot of webinars which are recorded. So again, people can play them back at their own pace, at their own time. If they want to listen to them whilst they're out for a walk, they don't have to be at their desk to engage with some of that content. So I think it's really about trying to make sure that people can gain access to that help and support in lots of different ways. And also positive messaging around it as well. It's with a lot of what you do, it's about creating that permission, isn't it, that people can access information and can take the time to work on their own personal well-being, whether that be mental or physical. And so I think creating that sort of safe space as well, where people are talking about well-being, they're talking about the importance of these things, they're sharing stories of what they did. I'm a big believer from a line manager perspective is that, I should be talking to my team about how are they looking after their well-being. If they tell me that perhaps they're struggling with something, we have a very open and honest conversation about, okay, well, what's a coping strategy that's going to help you with that? And what do you need from me to help you to do that? So I think just encouraging people to talk more openly about well-being and their own challenges and being vulnerable. I'm a huge fan of Brené Brown's and being vulnerable and things like that. So I think that's how we can do it, is through access and through just more conversations about it.
Big fan of Brené Brown myself as well. Thank you for that, Wendy. And David and Bill, if I may come to you, what I found, and I don't want to generalize or stereotype, but some of the firms that I've worked with and the wellbeing initiatives that I've been part of, I tend to find, particularly initially, there are more women involved rather than men. And I find that I have to do a lot of work outside of these sessions in terms of picking up the phone, speaking one-on-one to senior males within the firm and encourage them to come along, because there's that piece around role modeling and championing as well. So how would you sort of encourage men, or what can firms do to encourage more male participation in wellbeing initiatives? David, if I may come to you first.
I think you're right, and it is a generalisation. But whether it's men or women that are unable to talk, it is a barrier. And I probably come from a generation in sport when you kept most things to yourself, and it is really important to talk. But sometimes I think the most powerful voice you can listen to is yourself. So I think if people struggle to talk to each other, work out a mechanism for people to talk to themselves. And for me, one of the most sort of significant moments as an athlete was when I went to university, and my coach asked me to write a letter to myself that nobody else would ever see. And I wrote a very sort of honest appraisal of where I thought my career was, where my life was, what I wanted in life. And I wish now that after that Olympic experience that I'd written another letter to myself. And I think sometimes if you encourage people, if people are prepared to talk and speak openly, great. But if not, if they can answer very honestly you know, 3 or 4 questions, but nobody needs to see it, of, you know, what does health and well-being mean to you? What would you like to feel? If you could change one thing in your life, what would it be? If you could change one quality in yourself, what would it be? If time wasn't an issue, if money wasn't an issue, and just get people to, even if doing it anonymously, just write down, because having written that down, you know, possibly the most powerful voice you can listen to is your own. Maybe then people would be more comfortable about speaking, but just to sort of say, come and talk. And I think there's always a danger that that people are more comfortable being talked to, and therefore probably opt out of doing things because they just think, yeah, I've listened, I've heard. But you know, having a conversation, either a very honest conversation with yourself, or being confident to have a conversation with others that you're comfortable with. So that's a bit of a ramble, but I think sometimes just getting people to write very simple things on a piece of paper in their own words that only they see, actually probably at the end of that, they would be quite startled by how honest they've been.
Thank you, Dave. That's a really, really great tip about journaling, writing our fears, worries, concerns, or even where we want to be, is a really good habit and practice to get into. Bill, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's probably still true in a lot of law firms, but across the board, too many companies are still run by old white males, and it's very easy, but it equally applies to women, anybody in a position of authority, to basically excuse themselves from participation in any event. I think probably historically men have been less willing to share emotional problems and baggage because of upbringing. I don't think that really applies to so much to younger generations. My specialty is I'm a construction lawyer, and the construction industry has had a number of initiatives for the last few years about encouraging, it is still predominantly male, but encouraging, you know, men in the construction industry that it's all right to have feelings and to be upset and to have mental issues, because there are huge issues in construction because it's such a male dominated sort of area. So there's a lot of lessons that can be learned there, but I think that it is, again, it's Wendy mentioned, it's about, I think, access. Sometimes it's not giving people excuses. I see too many events that are in lunch times, or, you know, at the end of the day. They should be in the middle of the morning or in the middle of the afternoon. And when we've had events, you know, I know we're a small firm, there's only, you know, 10, but we shut, and you shut for an afternoon. And, you know, that's, if you're asking people to do stuff at lunchtime or after, that's not inclusion. Law firm, other firms can well take the hit on all the rest, and that way you just say we're shut. So unless you're actually not in the office, or you're not coming, you're going to be part of it. And actually, it's not just, it's making things fun. And I do believe that any sort of event you have, you've got to make people relaxed. So whether you're talking about mental health, whatever it is, you until people feel at ease with their colleagues, you're rarely going to get someone sharing, because it's as if you're fessing up to your boss. So you have to find ways of breaking that down. So I think before mental health sometimes just comes a lot of more work firms should do between its staff in just getting staff out doing. We closed the office last week and took everyone out walking for the day and then to the pub. That is mental health, but it's not mental health training, but it's about getting people out, shutting the office and just talking. Because if people can talk to each other, they're more likely to just let slip that they've got a problem, deliberately or otherwise. And basically you're saying, you know, can you talk to me, help me? So I think there's a range of things that you can do, but I think companies need to be a bit bolder.
Thank you, Bill. You're absolutely right. And my next question I'm going to put to Donna. So Steph has put in the chat, some employees are having wellbeing hours, for example, Owen Mitchell. A couple of things that I read in the press recently. So Sherman Sterling has said that they're going to allow all employees to work in a hybrid way in August. And then apparently Slaughter and May had a day where people were allowed to bring their dogs to work. Donna, what looking from the outside in, what sort of initiatives have you seen employers adopt successfully? And Zach, I see you have your hand up. I will come to you shortly.
Yeah, thank you, Nisha. I've seen everything. If you imagine, like, from the very basic to the very, like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, and all things in between. And I think what's really, really heartening is that we're hearing about it more and more. And of course, the more we hear about it, the more we read about it, the more other firms are going to start to think, oh, actually, we can put these new initiatives into place. We can make these small changes, and the world's not going to come to an end. You know, when Bill was saying earlier, back in the day, back when I was a trainee solicitor, well-being just was not a topic. It just wasn't. Your personal well-being, your health, your development was frankly none of the firm's business. So the fact that, it's so much in the press now is brilliant. I think what I would say about whatever initiatives firms are thinking of putting in from a well-being perspective, from where I stand, my advice would be just start. Some of the firms get really caught up in is this going to be enough? Is it going to come across as we're just ticking a box? What if we could do, and they get almost stuck before they've started. So my advice would be just start, keep it on the agenda. And, in terms of overcoming the challenges and the lack of engagement that we see still nowadays, the thing that really strikes me is challenges with well-being is not, it's not hierarchical. It's not based on what level you're at in your career. We are all human beings. We all have well-being challenges. So for me, the more I hear of stories and experiences from people right across the board in the legal profession, the more it's making it safe to talk about and, dare I say it, normal, So yeah, lots of brilliant initiatives, and, let's keep them going.
Lovely, thank you. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be this big bang, here's our shiny new initiative or a big hurrah. It can be a soft launch, and it can be done just in a very thoughtful, genuine and meaningful way. And I really like that piece that you said about sort of that, engaging people and getting that groundswell. Charlotte, I want to talk to you about our wellbeing ambassadors, actually. But before I come to you, Zach, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Anisha. Bill, I just want to say thanks very much for making those points of bringing well-being into, say, a morning rather than a lunchtime or at the end of the day. It's the biggest problem as a business. I have a well-being business. We provide different services. There is a large financial institution on Cornwall Road in Birmingham that was satisfied with getting 20 people out of their 1,000 on a Zoom well-being session at lunchtime, and that was success. And to me, that's not success. That really isn't 20 people. So I posed the question, can you not tell your employees to go at 10 o'clock in the morning and you pay them for being there? Just they would have to go to a meeting, for example, for GDPR training, for any health and safety training. Why can't we just tell people to go? Oh no, that clash with different people's meetings, but it'd be better than 20 people out of 1,000. If you get 100 out of 1,000, that's better than 20 people. So I think really participation and engagement can be a lot simpler by actually telling people that for this hour, we would like you to attend this training. Now, if there is a problem with attending the training in terms of it's something that may provoke emotional response, they've just lost someone, then fine. Whatever you want to do in that hour, but you're having that hour away from work. That's the first point I wanted to make. And the second point was it has to be demonstrated by everyone, senior management, middle management, lower management. Managers over teams are the closest people to those team members because they are constantly managing them. So if you can bring some training for those guys to be able to be responsive to their teams, and we're not talking that they don't have to be therapists, but they need some training in order to actually draw out some conversations with their team members. But it's simple things like those managers need to demonstrate the well-being activities, whether it's, which I'm going to be talking about later, which is meditation before a meeting. Can they do a 60-second check-in, mind focusing before a meeting, something like this? So anyway, my rambles and thoughts on that, but thank you.
Thanks, Zach, and looking forward to your mini sessions later on this afternoon on mindfulness and meditation, nutrition and movement. Charlotte, if I may come to you, could you tell us a bit about Harrison Clark's Wellbeing Ambassadors and also the management development that we've done with me as well, please?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the strategy that we have, and as I mentioned earlier, different pockets of the firm had an interest, and it was really led by individuals. But what we quite quickly realized is that probably within each of our offices, to get that consistency that we wanted, we needed somebody in each of the offices, and that's where the Wellbeing Ambassadors concept was born, really. And I invited people, because as has been said, I think you do have to have somebody who understands they're not there to be a counsellor, a therapist, that they are there being positive about well-being, understanding the benefits that it brings to the office environment that they work in, and just as we've said again, on a human level, just being there and supporting each other and recognizing if somebody's out of sorts or out of character, for instance. So following that process, we now have 11 wellbeing ambassadors. We meet on a quarterly basis to discuss the themes that we want to run in the office, and as I say, we have firm-wide events that bring us all together as well. We've just recently completed, we actually did 82 lengths of Great Britain. It was 70 lengths of GB in honour of Her Majesty the Queen's Jubilee year, and the idea behind that was just to get people moving. Whether it was walking, swimming, running, rowing, cycling. As it happened, the event favoured the cyclists, but the point was people were moving, they were logging their movement, and we ran that over the month of May up to the Jubilee weekend, and then had all sorts of sort of afternoon teas to celebrate it around the firm. But that was a fantastic way of involving people in a firm-wide challenge. And although inevitably, you know, us lawyers tend to be a bit competitive, the whole purpose of it was simply to get people moving in what is otherwise quite a sedentary job that we work in. So that worked very well. Nisha also mentioned the training, and again, this was one of the aspects of well-being that we really wanted to develop. And as has been said, getting people to understand, recognize signs, have the opening conversations, you know, that was what was beneficial to me, remember, you know, 10 years ago. And so working with Nisha, we developed 2 streams of training, one for managers, and one just for everybody could join in. And the manager's conversation was exactly that, you know, how do I approach an issue if someone's seems a bit out of sorts or work's just not quite where it normally is, how do I approach that? And giving people the skills, or helping them develop the skills to have those conversations, improves confidence, and it was really well received. The feedback we had was very good, and we brought in an external trainer to do that. Interesting about the timing of that, because they weren't compulsory modules of training. We had it on our learning and development hub that people could choose to join, and I think that's something, I don't know, maybe to look at again, Nisha, is, you know, we didn't want to force it on people, but then you do always end up with the ones who are keen and interested, and the ones who aren't, and as has been said, we really want to tackle that group, and that's going to be an area of focus for us next.
Lovely, thanks. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Wendy, I believe that Squires are launching a manager's toolkit. Can you tell us a bit about that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Nisha. I was actually just going to respond to what Charlotte said there, because I think that's such a valid point as well about the management training, because we sort of took it in 2 stages actually, because I think there's an assumption made, isn't there, that as managers we have to have ourselves together, and that we need to therefore help others with their well-being. And I think what we thought about was, well, first of all, it's that analogy of putting your own oxygen mask on, isn't it? It's like, how do we help managers who are in, high pressure roles, lots of plate spinning? How do we help them with their own well-being so that they're then in a good place to help others with theirs? So that was our kind of first approach. And then we've just developed a manager's toolkit that we will be releasing shortly, which kind of pulls all of that best practice you just said, Charlotte, together, is, how to have that conversation, how to recognize the signs, how to start a conversation. When we sort of started down this road a few years ago, and we were saying to people about having well-being conversations, it was interesting, because a lot of the partners were sort of coming back to me and saying, yes, but what if they tell me they have a problem? And I sort of had to say, well, what if they do? And it was almost like there was a fear that came across their face. They were terrified that someone would actually say, I'm struggling, or I have a problem, or I don't know what to do. So we realized we had to kind of help people with what that next follow-up comment or question needed to be in order to continue a conversation without just kind of going and like leaving the room. So that's kind of really where we've focused. And it was interesting, my own personal experience recently was, I had to think quite hard about how I wanted to be as a manager, having gone through a loss, and how I sort of almost showed up to my own team dealing with that. And I had sort of quite a long think about, gosh, how do I manage a team when I'm actually going through a really difficult time personally myself? And I just decided that I would go into it in a very vulnerable way. And I was very open with my team. And I think I even cried in front of my team on a call once, just so that, I wanted them to see me as a human being that was struggling with something. And I feel by doing that, it has given them permission in the future to be very open with me if they're struggling with something, because they know that, they'll get that kind of human touch. So I know that's a very small example, but it was interesting to me as a manager to think through, how do I behave myself when I'm struggling, as much as how I help others when they've got a challenge.
And that's a great piece of self-awareness, and absolutely, demonstrating vulnerability. And a lot of leaders are very frightened to demonstrate that vulnerability and worried about the impact and consequences of perhaps their reputation or their image. But as you said, that when done well, when done genuinely in a meaningful way, can work really, really well. I've just got one last question for Chris, and then I'm going to ask the same question to everybody. So Chris, I'd like you to just tell us about some of the successes that you've had as a result of the initiatives that you've implemented at DWF, and then just a final sort of tip from everybody, each of the panelists, on what tip do you have for firms that are embarking on their wellbeing journey. So if you were going to give just one killer tip, what would it be? So Chris, over to you first before that final question to each panelist.
Yeah, in terms of successes for me, the like I say, having that really wide group of people in our wellbeing committee, I think really helps. And actually the things that we brought in from a benefit perspective over the last sort of 12-18 months has been phenomenal. Sort of, Gym Pass comes to mind, an enhanced employee assistance program, mental health first aiders as well has been a success, along with wellbeing champions as well. So we've got kind of 2 levels of support going on there, which are then just to go back on some of that development stuff that we were talking about previously, they then also become really good points of contact for your people managers to engage with. So those line managers don't feel that it's all on them to be the person's line manager, having a conversation with them and actually trying to diagnose and solve whatever the problem is. They've got other people that they can go to who are better trained. So I think for me those are absolutely successes. And of course we have a fantastic line manager training program as well. Of course, I would say that though, wouldn't I? Which again we're planning on rolling out across the business over the coming months this year. In terms of that one absolute tip for me, it's that senior leader engagement. I think with that's the kind of thing that people see, they acknowledge, they usually respect, all being well, and actually hearing senior leaders sharing their experiences, sharing their own stories. We have a thing called Wellbeing Wednesday. I know that's a bit cheesy, but it kind of gets the point across. But a day where people blog, we share articles, and again, we encourage as many senior leaders to share their story as possible, because with that, others tend to follow.
Lovely, thank you very much. David, if I may come to you, please.
Well, I know we're getting towards the end, so thanks again for asking me today, and good luck with all your work, and I hope to bump into some of you during the year. I just think of 2 words: awareness and responsibility. So and it includes every single person in the organization, but raising the level of awareness, but individually, to the team, to the organization, of the importance of health and well-being and what it means to them. And then a commitment in terms of responsibility. What am I going to do with my own life? What am I going to do to help other people within my team? What are we as a company going to do to embed the notion that a healthier, happier, more fulfilled workforce is going to be ultimately to everyone's benefit? But if you raise the level of awareness and make absolute commitments in terms of responsibility, and that's individually to themselves, team, organization.
Lovely, thank you very much. Donna.
Thank you, Nisha. My top tip would quite simply be to keep it on the agenda. Keep it on the agenda for your own focus, for your daily planning, your weekly planning, your one-to-ones, your meetings, every single agenda you've got. Keep it on the agenda, but just not on the agenda. Number 1 on the agenda. That would be my tip.
Wonderful, thank you. Charlotte.
I think we may have lost Charlotte.
Okay, fine, that's fine. Wendy.
Yeah, I think anyone that's embarking on a program, I would say there are lots of easy ways to do this, actually. You know, there are many notable dates in the calendar that can help you to create some structure around a program as well, and to get engagement and to gain access to wider resources that can give you ideas and support as well. So I think it's sometimes you think you have to come up with all of this creative input yourself and to come up with a whole plan. And actually there's some really good stuff already out there. It's just a case of maybe tapping into it and finding one that works for you and that you think you'll get a lot of people behind within your business.
Okay, lovely. And last but not least, Bill, for you for some final words of wisdom.
It is one thought, but spare with. First, just keep it simple. You know, the KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Everyone talks about you can overcomplicate things. Taking what Dave said, if you don't take a step, you don't go anywhere. So the simplicity, you don't need any fancy plans. Just do something. Get off your arse, do something. And the best example I've seen of that is, we know the people at Burberry very well, based here in Leeds. They have a system whereby everyone's divided into teams, and when you come, there's a board for each team. And it has your name, and it has a space on the right-hand side where you put a score. And so when you come in on a Monday morning, you put a score. So if you put 10, it's like, yes, I am, a goddess. And so people will ask you, why is it 10? Or you put 1, which means I'm as miserable as shit, don't come near me. But somebody in that team is tasked to ask that person. And during the week, you can change your score. So every day you're just flagging up to people, I'm feeling great, I'm feeling a bit shit. And that's a really easy way of effectively flagging up to people. You don't have to say anything. And it's up to people who have a bit more training or to then go and ask that person. Or if it's something brilliant, you share it. But it's an incredibly effective way of getting people to just simply engage, because all they do is write a number, and each day you can change it or leave it. Thanks.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And you're right. There's a lot of sort of dwelling and ruminating on how we're going to do this, and we end up wasting a lot of time. Whereas we can, with something like this, take that step, just get on with it. One thing that really resonated with me is why is this so important? Is because how somebody looks on the inside versus what's going on in the inside is so different. So you never know what people are going through. Thank you so much to all of the panelists. Thank you for your insights, your contribution, and being so honest and thoughtful in what you have shared with us today. Over to you, Steph.
Thank you. And again, from me, thank you to all of the panelists. I really appreciate starting the conversation. And I do hope that going forward, Birmingham Law Society can run more events like this, because let's be honest, there shouldn't really be any secrets in wellbeing. What one firm is doing, another firm can learn from, and the more that we can share our experiences, I think the better for everyone. So thank you very much. I'm conscious we are slightly over time, and I know that people are joining and leaving during the course of the session. So I think, in fairness to Donna, I think it would be a good idea to let everyone have a very short break to replenish their drinks and refocus. So if we could be back and ready to go at 1:08. I think that's about 3.5 minutes, which should just be time to boil the kettle and make a drink. But thank you to everyone who took part in our first session, and we will be back with Donna in a few minutes. Thank you, and thank you, Nisha. Well, I make it just turned over to 1:09. So if you want to put your cameras on, it would be nice to see some more faces, but over to you, Donna, for your session.
That's lovely, Stephanie. Thank you very much. So hopefully by now you can all see my slides on the screen. So if you wouldn't mind giving me some thumbs up in the participants tab to let me know, that would be fabulous. Thank you very much. Awesome. Okay, so welcome to the second part of the Wellbeing Conference, the how to overcome your self-sabotaging barriers to being a successful lawyer. You already know who I am. I did an intro about an hour or so ago, so I won't repeat that bit. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You'll be pleased to know there is some audience participation in this masterclass. You're not just going to get to sit there and doodle away. What I do hope you're going to do is get your pen and paper at the hand. You're going to take in these key tips I'm going to share with you, and listen out for the audience participation, because there's one coming up very, very soon. So basically for the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to be focusing on the self-sabotaging barriers that we all have that are getting in the way of you burning bright in your career. And I just want to signpost that at the end of the session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link in the chat, because if this masterclass triggers something in you, resonates with you, and you want to talk about it in more depth, I'll post a link in the chat so you can book a call in with me. So I'll do that at the end. The other thing to say is on the screen in front of you, you've got a QR code. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn and you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, by all means, please scan the QR code. Don't worry if you miss it, because it's on the end slide as well. I think that's all of the housekeeping. That's all the housekeeping. So let's dive in. All right. So first bit of audience participation, please. I'd like for you to reflect back on the last few weeks, the last few months maybe, and either raise your hand or give me a thumbs up in the participants tab, or write yes in the chat if, as you've reflected on the last few weeks, the last few months, you've been feeling overwhelmed. So hands raised, thumbs up, or a yes in the chat, please. Okay, so yeah. Oh, the thumbs are going up. Yeses in the chat. Okay, lovely. Okay, still thinking about the last few weeks, the last few months. Hands up, thumbs up, yes in the chat, whatever works best for you. How many of you have been feeling emotionally drained? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, and final question for this part of the audience participation. Over the last few weeks, last few months, how many of you have just had this sense of being unable to meet the constant demands that keep coming your way? Hands up, thumbs up, yes in the chat. Yeah, okay. Right, brilliant. Thank you. Well, not brilliant that you're all putting your thumbs up, but brilliant that the audience participation is working. Love that. Okay, so why am I asking you about these questions? Well, let me tell you a little bit about burnout. I mentioned burnout earlier on in my intro. So burnout is a state of physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. Okay, and in the panel you heard several of us talking about, it's not just mental well-being, it's physical well-being, it's all the well-beings. So burnout covers mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. And it tends to occur when you have excessive and prolonged periods of stress. And the key signs are overwhelm, feeling emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. So it's fair to say we have burnout in the Zoom room today. And what I want to say to you is, if that's your reality at the moment, if burnout is your norm at the moment, it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't have to be that way. And you're going to hear me talking a lot in this session about burning bright. And burning bright is quite simply the opposite of that. So when I talk about burning bright, it is the difference between thriving in your legal career versus barely just surviving. So I want you to imagine just for a moment, imagine being able to focus on what's important to you, okay? Imagine being able to prioritize your well-being. I mentioned earlier, make sure it's at number one on your agenda. Imagine being able to prioritize your well-being. so that you are consistently able to take time to refresh and recharge. And imagine that because you're able to do all of that, you're able to set yourself up for success because you're being at your best more of the time. How amazing would that be? Now, for some of you listening to me saying that, you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, that'd be great. But no, that's not my world. This is. And if this is more your reality, it's possibly because you have been susceptible to the conditioning that is definitely live and well in the legal profession, but in fairness, across a lot of the different sectors. And it's that conditioning that says, if you want to be successful, you better work hard, work long hours, and don't even think about switching off. Now, what I want you to know, that it's not your fault. You've done nothing wrong if you've fallen foul to that conditioning. Basically, we're just not taught how to prioritize our well-being. We're just not. It's not a university degree. It's not on the LPC, you know? So what I'm going to do is over the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to show you how to turn this around. So let's think about this. Burning bright then. It's different for all of us. My version of burning bright is different to your version of burning bright, but we do all have 3 common barriers, okay? The first barrier to burning bright is a lack of balance, where it's all work and no play. And that is very often due to a lack of boundaries, where you find yourself saying yes to everything, when really what you want to be doing is saying no. And that lack of boundaries is because of a lack of belief, in particular, a lack of positive self-beliefs. And from my own personal experience with self-sabotage and from working with lawyers at all levels, when we're dealing with burnout, there is always at least one of these barriers in play, usually all 3 of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each one of these barriers in turn, and I'm going to share with you some very easily applicable and immediately applicable tools, techniques, hacks to start overcoming these barriers straight away, okay? And my aim for this session is that you are able to create more balance, that you are able to establish boundaries that are respected and adhered to, and that you uncover that guiding belief that's guiding all of your actions and decide whether it needs an upgrade or not. Everybody up for that? Give me some thumbs up, some yeses in the chat. Awesome. Love it. All right then. So I mentioned that burning bright is different for all of us. So where we're going to start is I'm going to give you some time to think about what your definition of burning bright is. So you're going to need your pen and paper for this. So first of all, I want you to think about when you're burning bright, what does that look like? When you're burning bright in your career, what does that actually look like? Where are you? What are you doing? Who do you see around you? What are the things that you see when you're burning bright? And I'll give you a moment just to capture down some initial thoughts on that. And what does it sound like? When you're burning bright, what does it sound like? What do you hear around you? What do you hear people saying about you? What do you hear yourself saying about you, either externally to others or internally? And don't tell me it's only me that talks to myself. I know I'm not alone on that. But what do you hear when you're burning bright? What are you saying to yourself and to others? And then finally, what does it feel like? When you're burning bright, what does it feel like? What are the emotions that you feel when you are absolutely burning bright? Where do you feel them in your body? capture down the words that describes what it feels like when you're burning bright. So what we're starting to create there is a vision, an image of you burning bright. You now have this. You've got something tangible to reflect on, to work with. But let's bring it to life a little bit more. What I want you to do now is, if you imagine we have a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being, I am so nowhere near that vision of me burning bright, I'm barely a glimmer, and 10 being, I am so burning bright, I am a lighthouse. Where would you put yourself today on a scale of 1 to 10 as it relates to your vision of burning bright you've just created? I'm not going to ask you to share it. This is for your reflection purposes only. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 with how bright you're burning as it relates to that vision of your burn bright you've just created. Now, the next step is really, really important, because this is going to help inform what you need to be focusing on as part of overcoming the self-sabotaging barriers we're going to dive into in a moment. So looking at the rating you've given yourself, let's say, for example, you've put yourself down at a 6 out of 10. Okay. Take a moment now to jot down what's happening that makes it a 6 out of 10. Now, I don't mean what's missing and why you're not a 10 out of 10. We are going to come on to that. What I want you to reflect on, first of all, is what's happening that's making it a 6 and not a 3. So again, I'll give you a few moments just to jot down what's happening that's giving you the rating you've selected today. And now you can focus on what's missing, which is generally where we tend to go first of all, isn't it? When we're giving ourselves a rating, we look at the gap that's missing rather than what's already there. So rather than thinking, well, what would need to get me from a 6 to a 10, whatever you've rated yourself at, I want you to take a moment now to think about what would need to happen to help you move it up just one step. So if you're at 6 out of 10, what would need to happen to make you a 7 out of 10? Because that's the other thing we often do when we're trying to make changes, especially when we're trying to overcome burnout. We want to go from burnout to burn bright overnight, immediately, please. But here's what I say to all of my clients. You didn't burn out overnight. It was a steady, gradual, sometimes quite stealthy process. So to reverse that, it's going to take time. It's a journey. It's a forever journey. So what would need to happen to move you up just one step on that scale? Brilliant. So now, we haven't even started looking at the self-sabotage barriers yet, but you now have a vision of what you burning bright looks like, sounds like, feels like. You know where you are today. You know why you are where you are today, and you know what you need to do next. How perfect is that? Let's dive into the self-sabotage barriers to find out how we're getting in the way of us burning bright more often. So the first barrier I mentioned is the lack of balance. Now, this is a very common barrier, but it's considered from a number of different perspectives. So I'm going to give you a quick counter through of some of the perspectives that we often see when it comes to the topic of balance. So the obvious one is work-life balance. We hear this all the time. It's almost like the holy grail. How do we achieve work-life balance? Sometimes it's considered from the perspective of we're looking for an equal split. We want all areas of our life, whether that's health, career, relationships, whatever it is. I want everything to be balanced, equal. Some of my clients, when they talk about balance, it's that balance between when they're hustling, when they're really sort of in the trenches working hard, and the time when they're unplugged, when they can switch off and step back. That's the balance that they're looking for. But there's even grayer areas within the areas of balance. So if you think about it quite simply from a doing versus thinking time, you know, if you think about your typical day, your typical week at work, Where is the balance between the doing and the thinking? Do you even have any thinking time, or are you literally moving from one thing to another, to another, to another? Depending on what area of law that you are working in, or whatever your role is within the legal profession, you will undoubtedly have times during the year when it's super busy, times when it's quiet, the peaks and the troughs. But where's the balance in the peaks? Where's the balance in the troughs? And let's not forget that corporate conditioning I mentioned earlier on that says to be successful, you got to work hard, long hours, and never switch off. I'm not hearing much balance in there. Are you? So what can we do about this lack of balance? Well, I've got 2 techniques to share with you that can help you regain some balance, okay? The first one is a short-term focus. This is something you can put into your days immediately, starting from today. And it's quite simply your daily priority plan and check-in. Now, generally speaking, whatever you need to focus on each day can fall under one of these 3 headings. There's your health and well-being, your loved ones, and your career and work. So your daily priority plan is at the start of the day, you look at the day ahead and you go, have I got something in my day to fall under each of these 3 headings? Is there some time in my day-to-day for my health and well-being? Is there some time in my day for me to connect with my loved ones? And is there some time in my day to work on what's important to me? And I'll come on to that word important in a moment, from a career and work perspective. And if they are in there, brilliant. If they're not, that daily priority plan is that prompt to go, I need to make sure I'm covering all 3 of these areas. So that's the start of your day. At the end of the day, you do a check-in and you look back on the day and you go, did I do what I said I was going to do from my health and well-being perspective, from my loved ones' perspective, from that important thing from my career and work perspective? If the answer is yes, brilliant, you have balance. If the answer is no, this is a really good reminder to make sure it gets prioritized tomorrow. And what this does, by bookending your day with the daily priority plan at the beginning and the check-in at the end, you're preventing the risk of, when so let's say, for example, I'm going to start running at lunchtimes. I'm going to run at lunchtime. And then you don't run at lunchtime today because you're at Wellbeing Conference. You go, it's okay, I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you don't run at lunchtime because you get called into an urgent meeting. It's okay, I'll do it tomorrow. And before you know it, all of the tomorrows have turned into weeks and turned into months. So using this daily priority plan and check-in just helps prevent that from happening, because you're going to be alert to it quicker. Is that making sense? Give me some thumbs up, some yeses in the chat. Marvelous. Okay, so that's technique number 1. The second technique is more of a medium to long-term focus to help you regain balance. And I know some of you are going to groan when I say this, but it's the planning. Yeah, plan ahead. There is no point looking at your diary tomorrow going, I can't do any of this balance stuff tomorrow, it's full. Plan ahead to next month. Hell, plan ahead to next quarter, because if your calendar is anything like mine, next month's still chock-a-bonkers, yeah? So plan ahead. Start carving out time for the thinking as well as the doing, for the downtime as well as the hustle and the transactional. Very, very simple tools that can help you to regain the balance. Now, it's fair to say, many of you are probably already great at the planning bit. The bit that trips you up is likely to be the implementing of the plans or the sticking to the plans. Yeah, I'm seeing some laughs on the screen. Yeah, it's not just me. So here's the thing. The reason why we find it really hard to stick to our plans is because of the lack of boundaries. Okay, your current boundaries are very unlikely to be supporting the balance you are seeking to create. So how do we overcome the lack of boundaries? Well, first of all, I want to just recommend this book to you. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I'm seeing some claps and some thumbs up. The tool I'm going to share with you now is a condensed version of one of the tools in there. If you haven't read that book, please put that on your list and read it over the summer. It is a game changer for many reasons. I could do a whole session just on that book alone. But in that book, Stephen Covey talks about this matrix, urgent and important, and he gets you to think about where are you spending your time. For today's purposes, I want to speak to you about the words urgent and important. Okay, now pop in, yes, Zach, sharpening the saw, love it. Pop in the chat for me. When I say the word urgent, what sort of things come to mind for you? What would make something urgent for you? Pop in the chat. Deadlines, yes. What else? What else would make something urgent for you? Yes, court deadlines, can't postpone, key clients, love it. There's a real sense of time pressure, must deal with this now. Okay, what about the word important? If I say the word important to you, what comes to mind as to the things that are important for you? Pop that in the chat, please. Yes, Zach, absolutely. That's definitely one of my important things. Family, yes, Deborah. What else? When you think of the word important, what things come to mind? Yeah, not letting people down, Stephanie, absolutely. The reason why I'm asking you to consider urgent and important is because they have very different energies, okay? When we are focused on all of the urgent things, the time pressured things, the emergency things, it has a very reactive firefighting energy, which is totally fine as long as we're not doing that all the time. When we're in that urgent firefighting reactive energy all the time, that's when we end up getting burnt out. Remember I said earlier, it's that excessive and prolonged periods of stress. Equally, when we're looking and focusing on the urgent things, we're not able to stick to the plans we've got for the important things. So what I would request you do is spend some time after the session today thinking about all the things that are important to you, whether it's things around your health and well-being, like meditation, whether it's your loved ones, quality time with family and friends, whether it's your goals and dreams and ambitions for where you want to take your career. List them all out and get really clear on why it is they're important to you. And then plan those things in your diary. Because here's the thing, you are more likely to respect, adhere, and maintain the boundaries around the things that are important. So get clear on what's important to you and plan those things in. Now, so we've covered lack of balance, we've covered lack of boundaries. Let's look at this third one. Lack of beliefs. Now this, for me personally, and from the experience of working with countless clients on this is the biggest barrier to you burning bright, to you being successful in your career. It's the foundation on which everything rests. Beliefs are quite simply thoughts that you've kept on thinking that have become so ingrained, they've become a belief. So if you've kept on thinking negative thoughts about yourself, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm never on top of things, this will never work, that's not for people like me. If you've been thinking that on repeat for time after time after time, you've created negative beliefs. I'm not good enough, I can't do this, this will never work for me. So the first step in overcoming this particular barrier is to uncover the negative belief. So we're going to do an activity now where I'm going to put on the screen a number of beliefs. And as I'm taking you through them, what I want for you to do is just write down which one or two resonate with you the most? I'm going to put 10 on the screen, okay? So for now, just capture down for you which one resonates with you the most. So the first one is, I don't know enough. I'm a failure. I'm not good at what I do. I can't do this. I have to work hard to succeed. I don't have what it takes. It can't be easy. It must be hard. Who am I to do this? I need to learn more. I'm not good enough. So just jot down for yourself which one or two of those beliefs really resonated with you, made you think, oh, yeah, I actually do catch myself saying that to myself, or even out loud to others. The next step, what we're going to do is we're going to take this negative belief and we're going to flip it. We're going to upgrade it, okay? Let me give you some examples of what I mean by that. So let's say the one that stood out for you was, I'm a failure. Well, instead of telling yourself you're a failure, let's flip that to, I am constantly growing and evolving. Maybe it was the, I can't do this. Well, let's upgrade that to, well, I am doing this. Who am I to do this? I am the one to do this. I'm not good enough. I am good enough. Now, they're just some examples, but remember I said earlier, the thing about beliefs is they are thoughts that we've kept on thinking. So it's all very well and good giving the negative belief an upgrade and turning it into a positive one. But actually, to really bed that in as a new belief, you need to repeat this to yourself. You need to be thinking this over and over again. And I've got a really, really handy tip that my coach taught me a couple of years ago. And I remember when she first suggested it, I was like, really? That really going to make a difference? And now I swear by it. So, you know, on your smartphones, you can set alarms, okay? And you can set them to come at different times and you can actually label them. So whatever your upgraded belief is, set yourself an alarm to come on 3 times a day, maybe first thing in the morning before you start work, at lunchtime when you should be on a lunch break, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and at the end of the day. And you title it whatever your belief is. I don't know if you can see, but my 10 past 10 one is, I'm constantly growing and evolving every day. Yes, I use these tools too. So bed this new belief in by repetition. Even if you're sitting there thinking, no chance, that's not going to make a difference, just try it and see what happens. To burn bright in your legal career, it starts with a key belief in yourself that guides your actions. Those actions will then help you to establish the boundaries you need, so you're saying yes to you more often and no to some of the constant demands that come your way, which will then enable you to create the balance you seek and desire so that you can, and you do, burn bright. Now, how do I know all of this works? Well, I said in the intro right at the start of this session, I'd tell you a little bit more about my story. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes now just to do that, if I may. So these 3 self-sabotaging barriers that you see on the screen in front of you, I battled with these all the while as I was a junior lawyer. They were a constant companion every day. And if I'm being completely honest, they followed me through all of my professional roles from when I left law up until about 5 years ago, okay? Things came to a head for me back in June 2017 when I had what I call my major burnout. And I want you to picture, it was a day like any normal day. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. Back-to-back meetings all day with no hope of getting any work done until you get home in the evening. Anybody else relate to that? Some thumbs up? Yeah. And I get about halfway through the day, and you know when you're just not feeling tip top, you're kind of all right, but you're not fully functioning. And it got to lunchtime, and I thought I could really do with going home and having a bit of a kip. I'm just not feeling right. So I thought, I know, I'll do the right thing. Cancelled all my afternoon meetings, said to my boss, I'm really not feeling great. I'm going to go home, put myself to bed. I'll be fine tomorrow. And I call my husband and say, can you please come and pick me up? Because I feel like I've got motion sickness. I don't think I ought to be behind the wheel of a car. And he says, sure, I'll come fetch you. Now, the building I was working in at the time was 5 stories, and we were on the 4th floor. So to get down to reception for my husband to pick me up, I needed to go in the lift. And a colleague says to me, said, I'll come with you because, to be honest, mate, you're looking a bit peaky. Always what you want to hear when you're feeling a bit rough. Like, thank you for that. So I remember getting into the lift, leaning up against the wall of the lift, and honestly, I could have slept where I stood. I just felt so tired. And the lift goes down to the bottom floor. We get to the ground floor, and the lift doors open, and I go to walk out. The next thing I know, I'm in a wheelchair in the first aid recovery room. What the hell happened? My colleague said, you literally hit the deck. You walked out of the lift and collapsed out. Like, good, excellent. Clearly do need a rest then. Is my husband here yet? So my husband arrives and mortifyingly wheels me through reception in my wheelchair, which is always fun. And if you imagine outside the building, the car's there, and he sort of parks me up at the side of the car, opens the door, and I'm sitting next to the car in a wheelchair. And I'm looking at the car seat, and I'm looking down at my legs, and I'm looking up at my husband, looking at the car seat, I'm looking at my husband, down at my legs. My husband's like, Dee, why aren't you getting in the car? Because my legs won't move. I could not get out of the seat because my legs wouldn't move. What followed was 3 days in hospital with every test you can imagine. I had scans, lumbar punctures, blood tests, physio, everything. And after 3 days, I could get around the ward aided with one of those Zimmer frame type things, 42, and I'm Zimmer framing it. What? And I couldn't carry myself. I could not hold my own body weight. And the neurologist comes to visit me on day 3, and she said, Mrs. Smith, great news. Medically, nothing wrong with you. There are no infections, there's no tumours, none of the scary things. I've been laying in bed praying that it wasn't one of the scary things. I'm like, thank goodness for that. Why am I still unable to walk? And she said, just tell me about what life's been like the last few months, would you? It's like, yeah, okay. We moved house in February. My daughter is still at preschool the other side of Nottingham where I live. So I now have virtually a 2-hour commute to preschool and into work, and then a 2-hour commute back to preschool out of work. So my days are about 14 hours long. I've just qualified as a coach. I'm training to be an NLP practitioner. I'm running leadership and management development for 13 teams. I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. And she was like, oh, I know why you can't walk. I was like, brilliant. She said, you've burnt out. I'm embarrassed to admit, I laughed. Up until that point, burnout to me just meant you were tired and you needed a holiday. I did not appreciate that burnout very often starts up here with the stress and the overwhelm. And if left unchecked, it manifests itself physically. So earlier on in the panel, when we were talking about well-being, covering physical as well as mental, as well as emotional, burnout, as I said, it's not choosy. It will get you one way or the other if left unchecked. It took me 3 months to get fully back on my feet. And it was during that time as I started researching burnout, what causes it, how to recover from it, tried all manner of different support mechanisms, therapies, several of the things that Zach's going to be talking about today got me on my feet after burnout. And that's how the Burn Bright program came to be. The Burn Bright program is how I help my clients recover from and avoid burnout. It breaks the cycle of burnout by teaching us how to overcome these barriers we've talked about today. Now, before I open the floor up to questions, I just want to say that obviously, if what I've talked about today has triggered anything in you, if it's resonated with you and you'd like to talk more about it offline, in a moment, I will share a link in the chat so you can book a call in with me. You've also got my email address on the screen there, as well as the QR code for LinkedIn. Told you that would be coming back. It is possible to burn bright in your legal career. I said earlier, I'm on a mission to make burn bright the norm in the legal profession. And with the things I've taken you through today, the tools, the tips, the techniques, they are so simple, but so powerful in their application. So please do give them a go, experiment with them, practice, and then see how you get on. So I think, Stephanie, we've got a couple minutes now to open up the floor to questions or even reflections if people want to share what's on their mind as a result of the masterclass. But one final thing, please remember, it's time to burn bright, not out. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. And I've just put a nudge in the chat. So any of you that have got either questions or reflections, please do share them with Donna before she goes. Donna, that was absolutely amazing. And I think one thing I would like to say is I think probably many people on this call start off with good intentions, whether it's at the start of the week, the start of the day, halfway through the day when they catch their breath. But as you say, we don't get onto it. I think the important thing is to make time to do it the following day. Don't beat yourself up if one day you don't go for your lunchtime run, but then bring yourself back on track for the following day. So do we have any questions? Who's going to be braving us? I'm sure there must be somebody out there. Do you want to, are there any questions? Are there any hands up? I can't actually see everybody at the moment.
No.
Nobody's brave enough to share. Come on, I'm sure there must be somebody out there.
Done them all in silence, Stephanie.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Go on, I'll unmute and talk. How about that? There we go.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Chris. And I've got somebody else who's typing. I assume that's another one coming in.
Yeah, I was typing, but I thought, oh, it's going to get too long. This, I'll just speak anyway. So, do you find? I mean, with me personally, I find it's little things that wear me down over time. So, you know, on Monday I might have a meeting that didn't exactly go how I wanted it to go, and I'll dust myself off and, you know, I'll carry on regardless. You know, Tuesday it might even be something as petty a bit like before, I've not got time to go to the gym today, or, you know, and then on Wednesday, you know, somebody who I've offered a job to doesn't want that job, and then it's that culmination of little things over a period of time that really wear me down. And it's those things that I find have a negative impact on me, on my ability to stay in my zone almost. How do you manage that? Because it's little things at a point in time where you don't think they're having that much of an impact on you, but then when you look back on them, they're having actually quite a significant impact on you.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I love that you brought that up. And this is actually one of the key principles of the Burn Bright program. So principle 3 is to choose your deposits and withdrawals wisely. And what you've just been describing there, Chris, are the withdrawals. So the withdrawals are the things that sort of drain our energy, that zap us, that just leave us feeling a bit, that sucked. And then off we go to the next thing. And if all we're paying attention to is the little withdrawals, like drip, drip, drip over time, we're not focusing on the things that are lifting us up, the deposits, the things that nourish us, that put a smile on our face and a spring in our step. So what I coach my clients on is how to pay attention to the deposits and the withdrawals, because the withdrawal is going to happen. You know, we live in a world where there's some hefty withdrawals going on, but interestingly, it's the little ones that seem to just chip away at us. So how I recommend to my clients overcome that is start paying attention to the deposits each day. If you notice a withdrawal, which you will, because you'll feel it, that sort of, really? That's your cue to go, right, what have been my deposits today? Well, actually, I had a really awesome call with a client this morning. I've had a great email with feedback from a course that I delivered, and I'm getting to spend time with my best friend tonight. And just notice the difference it makes. It doesn't undo the withdrawal, but it tops you back up again. So if we're paying more attention to the deposits whilst acknowledging the withdrawals, we're building a level of resilience against those withdrawals, if that makes sense, Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I think that's so true. And the same with overwhelm, because we all get to a point. I looked at my diary for July and thought, I can't wait to get to August. But actually, perhaps when, before I get to August, hopefully, if I look at the good alongside all the sort of withdrawing actions, then hopefully that will help. And I think Wendy's question is quite similar. So as a people pleaser, I find maintaining my own boundaries is hard, as I too easily put them aside for others. Probably the bigger question and some counselling, but any quick tips as to how to address that balance and put myself first? Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Wendy. So again, this is I love this. You guys are just like pointing me to the principles in the Burn Bright program. So this is principle number 5, which is no is a complete sentence. Now, when I'm coaching on this, I will get this question around, but I'm a people pleaser. I'm here to serve others. It makes me feel better to be there for others. How, you know, if I put myself first, they're going to think I'm not a team player. There are consequences, all that sort of things. And my tip here is to just take a moment to think about what are the consequences of you not putting yourself first? You know, what if each week you keep meaning to take that hour just for yourself and you keep giving it away to somebody else? That 1 week might not make that big of a difference. 2 weeks, maybe not. 4 weeks, maybe not. But over time, the more you say no to you and yes to others, it's not only having an effect on you physically and mentally, but emotionally as well. Because here's the thing, when people are struggling with burnout, the other thing that sits side by side is low self-esteem and low self-confidence. Because every time you say no to you and yes to someone else, subconsciously you are actually saying to yourself, you're not as important. And then we end up falling into that vicious cycle of burnout, but not thinking enough about ourselves to want to put ourselves first because we don't feel important enough. So the tip, Wendy, is say yes to yourself once a day. Do something that's just for you and don't let anybody else remove the boundary around that. But thank you for asking that question.
And Donna, we have a similar question about how do you, I've lost it, it's scrolling up and down, let me go back to it. How do you deal with the pressure of needing to say yes to opportunities at work when you are on your way up the career ladder, which I think probably will resonate with a number of people on this call today?
Love that. Thank you, Mariam, for asking that. So here's where getting clear on what's important to you matters. So as you want to move up the career ladder, it's really, really important to be clear, where is it you're wanting to get to on that career ladder? Because then you can start to be more discerning with the opportunities that align with the direction you want to go in. So you say yes to those, and any that seem like a good idea, that look like a good idea, but frankly aren't aligned with where you want to go, you're in a much better place to say thank you, but no thank you, that's not for me. And it takes practice. We're not very good at saying no to other people. So please don't think this is going to be an overnight fix. It takes practice, but get clear on what's important to you and let that be your guide.
And I think that's very true. We can say no to ourselves so many times. We put off things that are important to us on a personal level in order to say yes, particularly from a junior perspective, you know, partners going out, gives you something to do at 4:30, they want it done tonight. You were going out with friends, but you decide to leave the friends and do the job that's landed on your desk. And I think that is all about balance, as far as I can see. I mean, I'm kind of the other end of the scale now. I'm probably the one that dumps the work, but you know, I think it's also become very difficult to balance work and personal life with remote working, because the reality is my laptop is on a lot longer now. I was very good at the start of the pandemic for kind of having my working day and my personal time. Now I've kind of got into a habit of doing a bit of both during the course of the day. And I personally have noticed over the last few weeks that I've been logged on longer and later, which in reality is not good for me. So something like this is really good to make me think. I will log off at a reasonable time tonight and do something else.
Please do. I mean, I heard about a year or so ago, I was at an event and I heard someone say, oh, it's great because I'm not wasting time commuting. I can get more work done. And I was like, no, please use the time when you would have been commuting to do something for you. You know, if you would have been on the train or the tube listening to a podcast or reading a book, still do that. Still keep those boundaries. You know, it seems counterintuitive, but the more you take care of you, as I'm sure Zach is going to emphasize later on, the more you take care of you, the better you are at the job anyway.
Absolutely. And you function better. And I think one final question, do you have any practical tips, like Outlook tips for better organization that then allows you to create space in your life? I mean, I think one of the things I've tried to do, but it never seems to work, is to block out time in my calendar. But I always get to that blocked out time and think, well, I'll just do something. The other is about setting alarms. And I go through phases to remind myself to take time out and to do something. And you're right, Zach is going to touch on that. But in terms, particularly in Outlook, do you have any tips for people?
I think for me, there are the practical, like you say, the practical tips, blocking time out, setting alarms, but it's the step before that. It's the reminding yourself why you thought it was a good idea to block that time out, why you thought that alarm would help, because we can get so busy, so caught up that we forget that if we don't take the time for us, then there are going to be consequences. And like I said, you know, I'd known for months something wasn't right. I remember saying to my husband at the Christmas before I had my major burnout, something's going to give. I said to him on the holiday in April, I need to make some changes. And it was something I was always going to get round to. And it was only when my legs got taken from under me that I thought, oh, should have done that. So don't be like me and wait for your legs to be taken from under you or whatever other physical manifestation it is. Make the change now, but just pick one thing. Do one thing different. Do what I suggested to Wendy. Yes to you once a day. Start there. It'll make a difference.
That's absolutely great. I think we have about a minute left in order to have a quick break before the next session. Does anybody else have any final comments, questions, reflections, queries? Silence. You must have stunned them into silence. I'm absolutely delighted that you've joined us today, Donna. I think that everybody will be able to take something away from it, and hopefully they will connect with you on LinkedIn. As I said in the chat earlier, Donna is really great on LinkedIn because she does these short 30-second videos when you log on in the morning and you hear her giving something inspirational for the day. And it really does, you know, it is about that time thing. Even if I watch your little links in the evening, it still reminds me that I should have done something. So thank you very much, Donna, and I do hope you'll stay with us for the next part of this session. Zach, if it's all right with you, we'll give people sort of a 3 or 4 minute break just to, again, refresh drinks, nip to the loo, grab a sandwich, whatever it is. So if everyone can be here at 4 minutes past 1, that should give you plenty of time to refresh your glasses. Thank you. I just have to share this with you, Donna. Somebody sent me a message saying that I have been on from the beginning, but I've been running errands in town, so I was logged on through my personal phone as my work one was dead. Fab session, really good that it's been recorded too. So I thought I'd share that one with you.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Right. We haven't got many faces. It would be lovely to see some more faces. I think we're pretty much on time and about to start. I've just seen the start of the tennis, so that's I didn't check my email, so that's a good time to go into your session, Zach. So really over to you, Zach.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie, and thanks for inviting me and some of my team members to today's Wellbeing Conference. And thank you, Donna, for a wonderful session. Some really key points in that I certainly talk about as well, but really well put together. It's essentially building resilience, which is, you know, the thing that we're all trying to build, really. Nourishing activities is how I term it, but yeah, it's wonderful. So we've got 3 sessions for you today. One of which is going to be led by Mel Monks, who's a nutritionist, and she's going to be talking about the gut-brain axis, which is a fabulously interesting nutritional talk. And then I'm going to do some mindfulness meditation. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight, but not too much, because there's been a lot of information to take in today. So we're going to do a nice long meditation for about 10 or 12 minutes, which then I'll ask you how that's been. So I hope none of you run away just because I've said that. And then we're going to go to Claire Rawlings, who's another member of my team who runs a specific movement, wellbeing movement for the workplace. And Claire is wonderful at this, and she's developed this through her yoga practice. So without me waffling on too much longer and eating up the time that we have, I'll hand over to Mel, and she can share her screen, which she should be able to do. So over to you, Mel. Thanks.
Okay, I'll just share my screen. Thanks, Zach. Everyone see that okay? Give me a thumbs up. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for having me this afternoon. So as Zach said, my name's Mel. I'm a nutritionist and a holistic lifestyle and nutrition coach. So I help people look at all areas of their lifestyle in terms of their well-being. So when we look at diet, it's not just about what we eat, but it's also about other things that are going on in our lives as well. I wanted to come on this afternoon and talk to you about something that's quite exciting in terms of nutrition. You might have heard about it. It's to do with the gut-brain axis and the microbiome. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but if you've got any questions afterwards, then I encourage you to get in contact with us. So up until quite recent times, it was very much considered by scientists that the parts of the body were very separate, that the brain did its thing, the heart did its thing, and everything was kind of looking after itself. But in more recent years, there has been a lot of evidence now to suggest there is a lot of connection between what is going on in the body, the organs, and the systems of the body are talking to each other. So the gut is often regarded as our second brain, and it has lots of neurons in the gut that are communicating with other systems in the body. And they do this in a number of different ways. So the brain will send signals to our gut. And when I say the gut, we're talking mainly about the large intestine. So it sends signals through the nervous system, through messenger cells in the blood, through things like the lymphatic system. And also the gut will send messages to the brain through those systems as well. So they are constantly talking to each other. There's also another system which is called the vagus nerve, and you might have heard of the vagus nerve. So in Latin, it translates as the wandering nerve. And the vagus nerve connects the brain with all the different systems in the body, but we're talking about the gut today. So the vagus nerve talks, the brain talks to the gut through the vagus nerve, but the gut also talks to the brain through the vagus nerve. So it's a biodirectional communication. So What happens in the brain will affect what's going on in the gut, and what happens in the gut will also affect how we're feeling. So this isn't just about physical health, this is about mental health and well-being as well. So you can see there's things that it can contribute to how we might gain weight or lose weight, our bowel movements, how much nutrition we're actually getting in terms of the food we eat, microbial balance, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then things like how it affects our stress, how it affects our anxiety, our behaviors, our mood. So there's a lot going on here. To put it into context, if you think about if you've ever done, which I'm sure you have, if you've ever done an exam, if you've ever done a test, if you've ever had something that you've been nervous about, we quite often feel that in the stomach. We might get butterflies, we might need to go to the toilet more often. So how we're feeling in the brain is affecting what's going on in the belly. But also what they found more recently is the gut is actually affecting how our mood is feeling. So if we're feeding ourselves things that might be inflammatory, which might not be particularly helpful, those things can then have an effect on how we're feeling. So it might increase our anxiety, it might affect our depression. And there's also been linked to things like Alzheimer's, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So what is the gut microbiome? So when we talk about the gut, we're mainly talking about the large intestine, so right down at the bottom. And it's a collective term for all these microorganisms that we have here. We actually have 38 trillion microorganisms in our gut. So there are 39 trillion in the whole body, and 38 of those are in the gut alone, which gives us an indication of how important our gut might be. Putting 38 trillion into context, if you took every star in our galaxy and times it by 100, that would be how many gut bugs we've got going on in our large intestine. So 38 trillion microorganisms in the gut. And within that, there's anticipated that we've got at least 15,000 species. So there's lots of different things going on. They think there might be, they being scientists, researchers, they think there might be more than 40,000 different varieties in the gut, but this research has been going on for about 10 to 15 years, so it's really quite new. They're still discovering a lot about it. What they have found is our gut is a bit like an ecosystem. So like the Amazon rainforest, we want the Amazon rainforest to have lots of trees, to have lots of plants, to have lots of diversity. So that will help planetary health. This is the same for our guts. The more bugs we've got, most of them are helpful, the more we are going to benefit in terms of our physical and our mental well-being. In terms of how common the gut is, so you can compare lots of different people's guts, and pretty much everybody's gut will be completely different. So about a third is common in all humans, but about 2/3 are individually specific. And we can start to change our gut bacteria within 24 hours, and within a week, we could have completely transformed most of it. So what we put in our mouths really does have an effect on what's going on down there. So what are these gut bugs? Some of them sound a little bit ominous, but we've got things like parasites, viruses, fungi, bacteria, and some cool things called archaea. Archaea have been on the planet for 4 billion years. Before oxygen, and they used to be found in the rifts of volcanoes, the bottom of the ocean, and they've decided to take root in our guts because it's probably a little bit of a nicer, warmer environment for them to go. So there's lots of these different things that support each other, and these bugs interact with our body. They send messages to our brain, to our nervous system. They also interact with the food that we eat, and they interact with each other. Okay, so we're going to talk about why it's important towards the end, but how do we keep our gut bugs happy? So we don't have to be a vegetarian, we don't have to be a vegan, but the idea is that if we can eat as many plant-based foods as possible, it's going to help our gut bugs to thrive. The main reason is because plant-based food is high in fiber, and fiber was always a bit of a boring nutrient that, we just needed to eat so we could go to the toilet. But what they've realized is fiber acts as a prebiotic. So fiber feeds these bugs and they start to flourish, they start to multiply, they start to diversify. Each food, so each fruit, vegetable, bean, lentil, spice, herb that you consume, each has a different type of fiber. And each of those different types of fiber will feed a different type of gut bug. So we want to make the foods diverse as possible. So if you eat every week an apple, a pear and a banana, and that's all you eat every single week, you're just going to be feeding a very small amount of those gut bugs, because the ones that want you to eat spinach or broccoli and all those other things, they're going to start to diminish if we don't keep feeding them regularly. So the idea is we have this diverse diet. Also fermented foods, so things like kimchi, kefir, sauerkraut, raw natural yogurt, those things act as a probiotic, and they are actually live bacteria that you're putting into your system, and that will then help with that diversity. Things like the probiotic tablets and things you get generally get broken down in the stomach and don't actually reach your large intestine. So not all of them, but the majority of the things that are sold over the counter are a bit of a waste of money. And then things like limiting snacks between meals and time restricted eating. So obviously we need to be careful with things like this, especially if we're prone to having disordered eating behavior. But generally, if we can give our gut bugs a break, so we're not snacking all the time, they're not working all the time, then that gives them a chance to relax, to rest, to flourish. Whereas if we're feeding them all the time, they're never going to actually get the rest that they need. So think about maybe having a window overnight where you're not eating all the time, and spacing your meals out will be helpful. Getting outside as much as possible, exercising outside where possible. So we've become very clean, especially because of COVID, and obviously we've had to become clean, but actually a bit of dirt is good for us. I'm sure when you were younger, you used to play in the dirt. I was told I ate mud, but that is actually very helpful for us. So being dirty is not a bad thing. Reducing stress, we all know that stress is not a particularly helpful thing, but what it does is it creates inflammation in the body. It creates inflammation in the gut. And it's not just physical stress that can cause damage to the gut bugs, but also the foods we eat can be stressful. So we'll find out a little bit more about that in a moment. And sleep, we know that we need to get a good night's sleep. In terms of the body relaxing and restoring, it's the same for the gut bugs. So it's important we just have as much rest as we possibly can do. Okay, so pretty much the opposite. Which things cause damage to the gut microbiome? So this lack of plant-based diversity in the diet. So we talk about two words, dysbiosis when the gut is out of balance, and symbiosis where we've got this kind of harmony within the gut. So if we're not feeding it enough of this diversity, a bit like the rainforest, it's going to start to not be as productive and healthy as it could be. And the next really are kind of like a group. So highly processed foods, alcohol, smoking and sugar and artificial sweeteners, they start to confuse the gut. So the body doesn't necessarily know how to process things like artificial sweeteners because they're completely foreign to us. So the whole calorie thing sort of goes out the window in a way because it confuses the gut and it starts to change it. Alcohol can actually kill your gut bugs. So there's been some research to say a little bit of alcohol is okay, which is fine. Red wine is good. And even a little bit of lager is said to be quite good, but a little bit, you know, not having glasses every single night. Things like antibiotics and medication. So obviously, if we need to take medication antibiotics, then we should take them. But they actually wipe out all the bacteria in the gut. So not just the stuff that's causing the problem, the viruses, but also they wipe out the rest of it as well. We've talked about stress. Over-exercising can act as a stressor to the body. Lack of sleep. And again, coming back to this idea of being hyper cleanly. So washing your hands all the time. We haven't got time to talk about it today, but we've also got a skin microbiome. So we've got lots of bacteria living on the skin. And again, we don't want to wash all that off. We almost want to keep it there to help us out. Okay, so why? The big question, why? And it's important to know why we're doing these things so it doesn't just become another fad that we're following. And this very much isn't a fad. So in terms of physical health, if our gut is happy, if it's thriving, we are going to absorb more nutrients. So the food that we eat will actually be more helpful to our energy levels, to us being fit and well, and to us just working out as a better human being. It can also help us with things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, leaky gut. So sometimes we get to a point where the gut is so damaged that food starts to move into the bloodstream. So we don't want that. That causes inflammation. So having a healthy gut will reduce symptoms like that. Having a better functioning immune system. So 70% of our immune system actually lives in the gut. So if the gut is unhappy, then we are going to struggle to fight off disease and infection quite as well. And then there's this prevention of larger disease. So I've got a quote here that says, 20% of disease is based on genetics, whereas 80% is from the effect of diet and lifestyle on your gut microbiome. So 80% of disease is preventable if we start to look after what's going on down there. In terms of our mental health, if the gut is in disharmony, it will be sending inflammatory markers to the body. So the more stress we put on ourselves, the less tolerant we get to stress and the less able we are to deal with it. So if we can keep everything happy down there, then it helps us to deal with those stresses that are coming on in life. Also, if you think about the gut-brain axis, if the gut's unhappy, it's going to be sending messages to the brain that it needs to react to the stress. So we want to keep everything as calm as possible. It can help reduce things like brain fog, anxiety and depression. So again, the communication pathways. And 90% of our serotonin, which is our happy hormone, lives in our gut. So a bit like the immune system cells, they're living in the gut, also our serotonin. So without that, we struggle to be as happy as potentially we could be. In terms of Alzheimer's disease, this is quite new research, so it's not kind of a given, but there is evidence to suggest when we get Alzheimer's, there are these little plaques that form in the brain called amyloid plaques. And the gut microbiome helps prevent those plaques from forming. So if those plaques don't form, we are less likely to get these degenerative brain disorders. And finally, and can help reduce pain in the body. So that comes back to the inflammatory. If the gut's inflamed, it will send inflammatory signals to the rest of the body, and we can experience pain as a result. Okay, so top tips to finish. We've only got 20 minutes, so just wrapping up. So to keep it simple, this is not about restriction. This is about abundance, eating more plants. So the variety of those plants, the aim is to eat about 30 different plants a week. So that can be fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices. It can be beans, it can be lentils, anything that's as natural as possible that comes out the earth, and we eat it as it is. And like I said, that doesn't mean you've got to eliminate things. It just means we're adding more things in. Seeing if you can introduce some fermented foods into your diet. So you're putting in those probiotics. And most importantly, perhaps, is to go slow. So if we suddenly start to eat a ton of fiber, all of a sudden, we're probably going to experience things like gas, bloating, discomfort. So it's about gradually introducing those things into your diet and seeing how you get on with them. I've already said about focusing on what we can add to the diet rather than restrict. So we're in an abundance mindset rather than a restriction mindset, which is where often dieting fails, because there's only so long we want to restrict things in our lives. And just trying to maintain your stress levels as much as possible so that it's not having that knock-on effect upon the harmony of your gut. So even if you're eating all the wonderful things, if you're not happy up here, then that's going to be telling the gut that you're also not happy and causing problems there. So I hope that is helpful to you. I could probably talk about that for about an hour. So it is really just a whistle-top tour. I'm going to pass you back to Zach. But if you do have any questions at the end of it, then please feel free to ask.
Mel, I think that's absolutely fascinating. Sorry, Zach. I think that's absolutely fascinating, Mel. I mean, I think it's surprising that all the research that gets done, we are only now beginning to hear about these things. And I have to say, my top tip is focusing on what I can add rather than what I can restrict, because I think that is, I know we're not talking about dieting per se, but I think that is the one thing when people go on a diet, it's all about in their minds what they can't have rather than what they can have. So thank you, Mel. That's fascinating. Zach, I'll shut up now. If anyone does have any questions, please do put it in the chat for Mel. Over to you, Zach.
No problem. Thanks, Stephanie, and thank you, Mel. And yes, please, any questions, pop them in the chat, and we can answer them as we go through. But yeah, just have sort of 60 seconds now, just to have a short think about that. Ask Mel some questions before we go on to the next session, because otherwise we'll just keep going and then you'll forget what you've learned. So just have 60 seconds. Ask a few questions, by all means, put them in the chat, or just make a few notes on what's just been talked about. Oh, Donna's asked a question, so I'm behind on this, aren't I? How would you recommend adding more variety for the family? I have a 9-year-old who eats the same fruit and veg all the time.
Are they against eating different fruits and vegetables, or is it very much that they're sort of stuck in their ways in terms of what they like eating?
Yeah, I don't think they're against trying different things, but I think it's just that classic, they eat with their eyes. So if it looks different or smells different, it's like, oh, I'm not eating that. And so I'm conscious that I feed her the same fruit and veg with the mindset of, well, at least it's some fruit and veg. Yeah. But I'd love to get some more variety in there.
I think if you can include them as much as possible in, things like the shopping process, so getting to have a look at all the different things, where you can, if you can involve them in cooking things. It is estimated you should try something between 10 and 15 times before you like it. So it is about just repeatedly trying. And I know that can be frustrating because there might be waste and, it can be a battle with children, but it's almost trying to make it as fun as possible. And perhaps even seeing if they can think of 10 different things they can eat that week and make it a bit of a challenge for them.
Love that. Thanks, Mel.
Okay.
Great idea, Mel. I like that. Making it a bit of a fun, bit of a challenge. Really good. And also perhaps including it in different foods. So making stews and things like that. I guess we could just pile in things. I know I get my daughter Sophia to eat pasta with peas because there's cream and bacon in there and she loves that. And we just slip a few peas in there and then that kind of works, But, great stuff. Catherine, thank you. Sorry, Stephanie.
Breaking the habits. I mean, if you walk around a supermarket, and again, we've had a strange 2 years, but you do end up buying different things. Whereas, hold my hands up, lack of time, I tend to internet shop, and the easiest thing in the world is to go back to what you bought last time. So yeah, for me, it's about breaking that shopping list habit that I've got.
Yeah, I think something I've tried to do since sort of finding out a lot more about this is every time I go shopping, just try and buy something that I don't normally buy. Just one thing occasionally and see if I like it or not. And generally I do. And that then becomes part of my list.
Brilliant. Catherine, thank you for your comment. 30 different varieties is really interesting. Just counted. And even as a veggie, I don't eat that many. So, wow, yeah, it's but good to know, Mel. It's not just about 30 vegetables, obviously, is it? It's 30 kind of different things that have grown. I think that was your point, wasn't it? Am I right?
Yeah. So things like herbs and spices count. So if you think about if you made, I don't know, like even like a chili con carne, whether it was vegetarian or not, you can put quite a lot of different herbs and spices in that. So each one of those would count, beans and lentils, as well as fruits and vegetables, and even things like whole grain rice will count. So wholemeal brown varieties of things that haven't been processed. So really there's probably more than you think there is, but I can send you some ideas if that's helpful.
It sounds a great idea. Okay, Donna's having chili tonight. It's dinner at Donna's this evening because she's cooking a wonderful chili. So thanks, Donna. Okay, any more questions for Mel? If not, we can move on to the second session, which is my session, which is about mindfulness meditation. So if not, okay, so thank you, Mel. We'll go into our session. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if they can see my slides? Oh, I've lost everyone there. There we go. Great, yeah, got it. Okay, thank you. So I'm co-founder of Wellbeing in Your Office, and you've just had Mel, who's one of my team, deliver nutrition. We have Claire on next, who's going to be delivering movement. But I'm actually a mindfulness meditation teacher as well. The reason I do what I do is because I suffer with anxiety. I have done since I was 10. I have burnt out twice in my career when I worked in hospitality and in sales. I've been diagnosed with colitis, which is inflammatory bowel disease. And what got me through these different times was a Japanese non-competitive martial art called Aikido. I stress it's non-competitive. I don't get in the ring and get beaten up by people or try and beat people up. Aikido is essentially an embodiment of mindfulness. All the attitudes of mindfulness are within Aikido. So I've been practicing mindfulness really for about 35, 36 years. I met my partner 10 years ago. She's a yoga teacher. And when you date a yoga teacher, you kind of have to start doing yoga. Kind of part of the rule, apparently. So I started yoga, which was wonderful. Yoga is more accessible than Aikido. There are more classes. And then I got into meditation, which was a part of Aikido, but much more so in yoga. And then I started to become much better balanced. I could manage my stress better, and my anxiety was much more manageable. But I still developed colitis. And when I went to see a nutritionist, they discovered that I was eating what I perceived was a healthy diet, but I was eating too much grain. And I took my grain out of my diet, not completely, but mostly, and a lot of the dairy, and all my symptoms, which went from mouth ulcers to other unmentionable things, crashing, very pale, joint pain. I lived in pain for about 2 years. It's really boring being in pain. It's boring for other people. It's boring for yourself. And eventually my symptoms died off after about 4 or 5 months, and I've been in remission for about 7 years. So I formed this business 2 years ago because of my journey, because it's not just about mental health, it's not just about physical health, it's about gut health as well, which is what Mel's pretty much just talked about. And when we incorporate those three and get balanced with those three, then we're pretty present and healthy people. So that's our focus as a business. The session I'm going to be developing today is mindfulness meditation, and we can talk about this for hours, but we've only got a few minutes, so I'm going to start my stopwatch now so I don't go over time. Okay, so a few contraindications. We're going to do some meditation in this, or mind focusing, if that fits better with how you want to call it. It can get called either. But it's very, very rare. But there are cases where deep relaxation can cause seizures for people with epilepsy or asthmatic attacks for those with breathing conditions. Very rare, but it is something I have to mention. So if you do suffer with either of those and you're worried, just sit out the meditation part. But if you have an inhaler and you have someone with you and you're confident, then please continue. And if you do wish to ask me about that, then pop something in the chat and then I can advise. Okay, so if I can ask you, and I know this is really difficult because you're lawyers, but can you turn your phones off? Oh God, he's asked me to turn the phone off. We're trying to limit the amount of distractions for you so you can focus better. And mindfulness is about focusing better. And when you can focus better, you'll be more productive and you'll be healthier. So it starts now. It starts in this session. It starts in this Wellbeing Conference, which is been wonderfully put together by Stephanie and her team. So yeah, if you can turn your phones off or at least on silent, that'd be great. And a paper and pen, you may want to jot a few things down that come out of this session. So I'm going to jump straight into the benefits of mindfulness. there's clinical evidence to support a whole host of wonderful things with mindfulness. I've highlighted about 4 there out of the big list that you can read. And the main one is stress reduction. Stress is responsible for many of the ill health and diseases that we have, especially in the West, but in the world today. If we reduce our stress, or if we manage our stress better, then we therefore reduce the illness that we have because of stress. And that goes from cancers to heart disease to diabetes. So indirectly, mindfulness can really help with many catastrophic diseases, as well as general diseases for the body, through the ability to manage stress better. Stress is really important to us. You know, we need stress to perform, but it's acute stress that we need. We don't need the chronic levels of stress that we have in our day-to-day working. And often we don't even realize that we're under chronic low-level stress, but that's the dangerous stress. We're not designed as humans to have chronic stress. And by chronic, I mean long-term. Acute, I mean short-term. And that's where, with acute stress, we're really able. So if you imagine back in the days of hunter-gatherer, nurture nature people, we would have the threat of being attacked by animals or other tribes, or we would go hunting. And then it would be over. And then we'd rest and relax and enjoy the sun and each other's company. And that's where we have acute stress. Switch on, switch off. But now we're constantly feeling under threat in some way, whether it's we can't achieve our career, we can't achieve for the day, I'm not good enough. And also there's some of the things that Donna was talking about, those beliefs that we develop are causing us threats. So they develop stress reaction, low level, which is then not good for our health. So mindfulness is fantastic for reducing that. And we're going to practice some meditation within this session, because I'm conscious you've had quite a lot of information today. So we're going to do quite a long meditation. So hopefully you can really become present with that, and then we can talk a little bit about that and your experience with that. Another benefit is clarity and focus, and I think this is quite important for you guys in your practices, is that you're focused on what you're doing and you're taking in information, having to read a lot of documents. I know a lot of reading is done by lawyers. So clarity and focus is a key component that mindfulness can help with. Greater resilience, something Donna talked about, which was developing resilience, and mindfulness, working with some of the mindful activities that Donna was talking about, will help that. Getting better quality sleep, sleeping better. If you sleep well, it will affect your diet, it will affect positively your performance the next day. If you have poor quality sleep, you will take more risks, you will reach for sugar, you will reach for caffeine, you will be irritable, and people will know that you have a lack of sleep because you won't be getting on with them. So just simply having a good quality amount of sleep can have a tremendous difference on your well-being. Simple as that. Mindfulness, practicing some meditations before you sleep can be very useful in sleeping better. And improving work-life balance. Mindfulness can help with improving work-life balance, because mindfulness is about becoming present for the moment you're in. So if you're busy and you're not present for the lovely meal you're going to have tonight, or you're going out to the cinema, or you're with family and friends, then you're not actually being there. And if you're not being there, as in present for it, then you're really not getting the benefits of that for your nourishment, for your resilience. So improving work-life balance is really about being present for work and being present for your personal life. Okay. Well, what is mindfulness? What actually is it? So this is a summary from John Kabat-Zinn, who's really the founder of mindfulness. I'll give you a very quick, sped up version of what he did. He studied Zen Buddhism, which is where mindfulness originated, and essentially stripped away the religious framework, and we were left with mindfulness. He's a university professor of Massachusetts University, and 40 years ago launched an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is used by Google, used by many companies, used by hospitals, clinics all over the world. He's even done talks at the House of Commons to integrate mindfulness into schools in the UK, which is a fantastic thing to do to help people self-regulate, especially boys, with girls as well, obviously, but some of the problems we have in society are generally from young men. So helping them self-regulate through mindfulness is, from a society point of view, a really good step forward. John Kabat-Zinn summarized mindfulness in this summary that you can read here: paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment to things as they actually are. Now, I could spend 20 minutes just talking about this statement because there's a lot in that. And this is a statement from a man that's developed mindfulness. But just briefly, paying attention on purpose. So we're actively paying attention. And it's in the present moment of doing the thing that we're doing in the present moment. And then the without judgment bit. Really what it should be is without judging our judgments. We all judge. We all have judgments. And once you can accept that you're going to have a judgment, it's quite relaxing because you don't kind of bother yourself and punish yourself for having a judgment. What you do with that judgment is then either a problem or a positive, because if you react to your judgments, then you're quite possibly not going to get on with many people or yourself. So what we do is we don't judge our judgments, we let them go, or we listen to them and we see if they're right or not. But we allow judgments to come and go, just as thoughts and feelings will come and go. And the last part of this summary of mindfulness is to things as they actually are, paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment to things as they actually are. So the actuality of what's in front of us, not how we want it to be, not how we expect it to be, without projecting on how we judge something and how it should be, but actually how it is. What's the actuality of my situation? What's the actuality of the pain that's in my leg? What's the actuality of me feeling tired? Where do I feel this? What's the actuality of the work I have to do? What do I need to do? And as soon as we can start to pause and look at what something is, it's often less than we perceive it to be. Once we can locate what we need to do. So for example, feeling tired is a common thing that we all experience. So if you actually ask yourself, where do I feel this tiredness? Now, for me, when I feel tiredness, I feel a slight sickly feeling in my chest, in my throat, and sometimes in my shoulders. But it might be different if I said to somebody else, where do you feel tired? Oh, everywhere. I just feel completely tired. Where exactly do you feel tired? And then you break it down, and then it doesn't become quite the big deal that it is. We get to deal with it in an easier way. So I want to move on to some meditation myths, because within mindfulness meditation, we sit and we do what appears to be nothing. Okay, and that's pretty much what we're doing, but it's very hard for people to do nothing, especially lawyers, because they always want to be doing things because they need to be productive and do things. So meditation myths, let's go through a few. So sitting in a special way, this lady is sat cross-legged on a seat. You don't have to do that. You can if you want, and if it's comfortable for you to do so, you can happily sit like that. But actually, we can stand and meditate, we can lie down and meditate, we can do it with eyes open, eyes closed, or normally as we just do it sat on a normal chair, just with an upright position. Okay. We don't need to wear special relaxing clothes like we see some of the monks wear in the East. Tree hugging. You can hug trees if you like, but you don't have to. Okay. There is a lot to be said for being in forests and in woodland. It's very good for your well-being. And there's no judgment here with any of these. You can do them, it's absolutely fine, but you don't have to. Incense burning, you don't have to do that, although smell can be quite useful in making you feel present. I want to jump to this one. It takes a long time. It takes a long time. Actually, it saves you masses of time. The more you meditate, the more you're practicing being focused on the present moment, the more you can let go of thoughts that are ruminating, thoughts of anxiety. So therefore you get things done quicker because you focus better on the thing that you're about to do. So it's a very common thing to think, I just don't have time to do this meditation. I hear it all the time from my students. I see Stephanie laughing there. It's a common thing. And even myself, I can think sometimes I don't have time, but I have to stop myself and go, yes, I do, because I will get things done quicker. I will actually create more time because I'm better focused. I'm able to complete things quickly, and I can actually enjoy things when I'm there. It'll stop me striving for goals. No, it actually helps you reach your goals. You can plan when you're in the present moment. So it's not about living for the moment, which is partying, let's say. It's about being in the moment. So you can plan in the moment because that's the thing you're doing. So you can still get to your goals. You can still reach your goals. It's a bit woo-woo. It's all a bit woo-woo, isn't it? It's called that mindfulness. Well, the US Army, within their training, do these types of exercises where they have pretend bodies scattered about and have explosions going off. And what they then do, once the soldiers have had to be within this situation of loud noises, they've had to deal with simulated deaths and injuries, they get taken away straight afterwards and they get taught to meditate. And what they've found by teaching meditation to soldiers is they're much more able to self-regulate. They stay in the field longer, and they're more able as a soldier to perform better in battle. So if it's good enough for the US, and these are the US Marines, by the way. So if it's good enough for the US Marines, I think it's good enough for anyone that's in any business to take seriously some of the positive effects of mindfulness. And the last one is an important one because it's often one that people get confused about with meditation. And it's about emptying your mind. People say to me, I can't meditate, I can't stop my thoughts, I can't empty them. No, it's okay. You're not supposed to. You'll never stop your thoughts. They'll always come. It's not about emptying your mind. It's about letting go. It's about being present for the thoughts that come up when you're actually meditating. And some may linger, may stay around for ages. They may even be slightly obsessive, but we can learn to be with them and just allow them to be there. And eventually they should dissolve away and we can let go. So there's some of the myths. So what does it actually look like when we meditate? Well, as I mentioned, you can be just sitting on a chair, lying or standing. You would normally anchor with the breath. And what I mean by anchoring is that we need something to focus on to enable us to be present. And that's why we use the breath as an anchor. The breath as an anchor is, but the breath is always now. So every in-breath, every out-breath is always a present moment. So we can use the breath to actually become present. We can also use our senses. So we can use our smell, we can use our sight, our hearing, our taste, and our feel. And we can do this, for example, in informal meditation, which is enjoying a hot drink. By becoming fully present and immersing all your senses into your conscious awareness, you're distracting your mind from mind wandering and bringing it present for what you're doing. So a meditation could be walking to work. But remember, it's not just about walking to work and thinking, what have I got to do when I get to work? It's about being in your walk. Yeah. So maybe take a different route to walk tomorrow. Maybe walk in a different way, take a different route, take a longer route. It's only going to be a couple of minutes. And notice, be in your walk, notice the shops, notice how many chimneys there are around. Use something to anchor yourself in the present moment. Household chores. This guy is just really pleased about his folded laundry, isn't he? Folding all his jumpers, he's dead chuffed about that. This can be a meditation. Folding your laundry, who'd have thought that could be a nourishing activity that could be considered mindful. Doing it properly, bringing yourself fully present for it, it becomes a more nourishing activity. Okay. So a quick touch on doing mode and being mode, and then we're going to do some meditation because I'm waffling a bit on this session. I'm running out of time. So doing mode is, we have to actively balance doing and being. And I know Donna touched on this in her session. So doing mode is checklists, your strategizing, your critical thinking, your multitasking. It's all the stuff that needs to get done. It's important because we have to get things done, but we do need to balance this with being mode. And that's where we often fail because generally most of our time is spent in the doing mode. So being mode is pausing, deliberately slowing down and focusing on the present moment, noticing our thoughts and feelings, checking in with ourselves on how we're doing. And this can be just a couple of minutes in the morning, a couple of minutes at lunchtime, a couple of minutes in the evening. We can extend that to more meditation as well. So I'm going to leave you with this quote before I'm going to ask you to join me in a meditation. And you only have moments to live. That's all you've got. That's all any of us have. This moment, the next moment, the one after that, and it continues. So the more you're in the moment, the more you're present for each moment, whether it's good or bad, the more life you're going to have. The more that you go through on autopilot and you miss all the moments, the less life you'll have. So make the most of it and be in the moment. So, conscious of time, I'm now going to ask you or invite you to practice this mind focusing session. So if you're sat down on a chair, I'm going to ask you to sit up fairly straight with your feet uncrossed on the floor, your hands on your lap. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. You don't have to if you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. If you've got your eyes open, just bring them to a point, maybe on the computer screen in front of you, on the keyboard, and just let them blur out. And what I'd like you to do is just start to notice the contact between your sit bones and the chair. Notice the support of the floor giving to your feet, and the support of the back of the chair for your back. And now start to become aware of your breathing. So where's your breath most noticeable for you? Maybe it's your abdomen, maybe it's your chest, maybe you're noticing the rise and the fall. Or maybe it's in your nose, maybe you're noticing the cool air enter and the warm air leave. You're not trying to change the breath in any way, just simply allowing it to be as it is, and just bringing your awareness to that. And as we go through this mind focusing, this meditation, your mind will probably wander. It'll go to judgments. What am I doing this for? It may go to work, it may go to other things. But as soon as it does, just label where it's gone. And with some compassion and gentleness to yourself, just lead it back to your awareness of your breathing. And your mind may wander once in a meditation, twice, could be 1,000 times, but that's okay. But this is the practice of meditation. Our mind wanders, we label where it's gone, we lead it back. Just like the exercise in a gym where we do repetition, this is the same type of principle. Remembering that the breath is always here for you. Even if you're having a really stressful moment at work and you just need to close your eyes and anchor with your breath, that will help you. So just keep on for a few minutes now. focusing on your breathing. And now just start to extend that awareness of your breathing from a very fairly narrow focus now into your whole body. So you're now focusing not only on your breathing, but on your body as a whole. Imagining, if you can, that you're breathing through your body. And noticing the sensations that your body has. Maybe you're noticing warmth and cool areas. Maybe areas even of discomfort. Maybe tingling sensations in your hands. Just notice these. It can be useful to even imagine yourself as a mountain as you sit in this pose when you meditate. Strong in presence and grounded. And remember, your minds will probably wander again. Worries and thoughts and concerns. But be gentle with yourself if you notice this. And simply label where your mind has wandered to. Gently lead it back to your awareness of breathing and of your body. And now when you're ready, just wiggle your fingers, your toes, and then open your eyes when you're ready. Have a little stretch, that feels good. And you're back in the room. Okay. So, forgive me for running a little over on my session. But does anybody have any comments they'd like to make about the meditation, the session, how they felt during that? Meditation rocks. Thanks, Donna. Yeah.
No, I think it absolutely does. And I think it's so important, even if you can't formally meditate, the informal meditation is as important to bring you back to where you need to be than the formal. I mean, it's great if you can take time out and sit and meditate for longer periods of time. But I think even if you just do the breathing and the focus, particularly, it helps me before meetings and things like that to actually get back into the moment rather than thinking about the 101 things you have to do. So thank you very much for that, Zach. And Claire, I'm really sorry Zach's taken up half of your time, so I do apologise. I'm sure he'll make it up to you, but I'm conscious that I've got a lot of lawyers here who are desperate to get off the call. But I'm really sorry. If you could give us a really quick run through, Claire, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So
sorry, just before you start, if anyone does have to leave, we are recording this so we can share the recording afterwards. Thank you, Claire.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I did plan to run through a few examples of the things I do, but I'll just quickly in 5 minutes explain what I do, and then if anybody would like to contact me to talk more about it, then yeah, I would love to hear from you. So I show organisations, people how to move more whilst they work, and I think we've all realised over lockdown that we don't move enough, and we're always told all these stats around diabetes and all this stuff, but basically you feel better if you move. Like, even if you just walk up the road to get a cup of tea with somebody, you feel better, don't you? So we all know that we feel better if we move more. But there are real wide health implications for workplaces that don't move their staff. So my work is around that, sort of generating a culture where people automatically move at work and they don't really know that they're doing it because everyone else is doing it. So, and in schools as well. So if you think back, you were taught to sit down to learn or to work. And that's culturally how we think we're productive, is if we're sat on our bums on a desk, but that is not true. And so yeah, I'm trying to I'm on a bit of a mission to help people to change. So I went for a cup of tea with my friend who's a lawyer in Birmingham on Monday, and said, right then, Mo, what are the things the lawyers struggle with? So she said, reading lots of documents. She said, I can go to work at 9 and I'll look up at 2 in the afternoon, she said, and I've been reading a document for that whole time. So for me, that cries out lots of way forward, you know. So people end up with a bad neck basically, and I'm sure I can see people nodding. Sore necks, sore shoulders from leaning over the desk. So basically your head weighs like 12 cans of beans. So if you're leaning like this a day, you're bound to have a sore neck. So finding ways to break up that time is really important. And then when you do, what you do in that time as well to stretch your neck out. So I could, but I won't today, show you some neck stretches. I do a lunchtime move and learn on a Tuesday at 12:30, and it's free and it's on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to join me with an ache or a pain, please do, because I could probably fix it in that time for you. So the other thing that Mo told me is long calls. So if you ever get the opportunity to put your headphones on and listen and walk, I suggest that's what you try and do, and get your colleagues to do the exact same. Okay, I understand that sometimes you need to write things down, but if you can see on your weekly planner a time when you're listening to somebody for an hour, there's no excuse to put your headphones on and get outside and walk. That's a simple way. And I know everybody was saying, well, I've got a bad knee and I don't have any trainers and blah blah blah, but you know, these things really impact your life. So that's that. Standing desk. So it's all funky now to buy a standing desk, but what happens is that people stand then for hours. So it's the same problem of being sat on your bum, but then you're standing. And if you don't understand how to stand correctly, which is an absolute rant of mine with all these desk manufacturers who are willing to sell them all, but then they give nobody, you know, any support for learning how to stand. So if anybody's got a desk like that and you would like me to show you how to stand correctly and also how to move, so while I didn't want to jump around too much on this call, but normally I'd be doing bit of side stretching, bit of balancing, you know, bit of wiggling my hips because I'm standing up, and bit of leaning round, because there's loads of ways that you can move when you have one of these desks. I've got a stone on the floor, so I was stretching my feet. So if you've got plantar fasciitis, which I'm sure a few of you have, this is the way to fix it. So the last thing is also how to sit. So a lot of people they get their ergonomic chair and then they look at the bit of paper with it, and then they don't actually physically think about how do I stack my body. So I also help people to sit and move too. So what could you do while you're sat on your chair, you know, to move more? And there are loads and loads of things that you can do. And just to finish, because I bet you're all fed up, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah, so if you ever want to come to my lunchtime thing, please come along. If you ever would like any workshops in the workplace, I would love to give you a hand. So yeah, there you go. Finito. Thank you,
Claire. That's absolutely amazing, and I for one will join you on one of your lunchtime sessions on LinkedIn. But I think the other reason I wanted to include something on movement is the fact that so many people have been working at home for the last 2 years, and
yeah.
you know, I remember back to being in the office, and we used to have health and safety assessments all the time. You know, is your chair right, is your desk right, etc., etc. Yeah. But I think the reality is most people have got a desk chair now at home, or they've got some sort of desk, but not everybody has. And I think that's even more important to encourage people to move, because I'm conscious that some people are possibly sitting in an awkward position for hours on end. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah, and can I just say, it's not the chair. So when you get your ergonomic chair, that is not the answer to your backache. The answer to your backache is moving more. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. Has anybody, I know you're all desperate to get off. I know what lawyers are like. Has anybody got any questions of Claire? And maybe Claire will bring you back for a longer session with some practical tips.
I would love to. I love this stuff.
That would be brilliant. Somebody's saying yes, please. They want us to bring back. Question here: how often should you stand up when working at your desk? Every 30 minutes, or
right? Yeah, I knew somebody would ask me this. So I never tell people, oh, do it for 20, sit down for 20, stand up for 20. You know how your body feels. If your body is stiff or aching, just move, and your body will actually tell you when it's time to move. So for me, I couldn't have stood here for the last hour just like this because I would feel awful. So I have been like swinging around, and you know, when you're expecting a baby, it's the same kind of thing. When you go to a yoga class and they say, don't do this, don't do that. But actually, you know what you're capable of in that yoga class from how your body feels. So same thing, yeah. So I never recommend anything, to be honest. Just keep moving.
No, I think that's absolutely true, because some days are better than others. Some days I can sit down for 10 minutes and I ache all day, but other days I can sit for 3 hours. But I think it is remembering to move and listening to your body.
Yeah.
Do we have any final questions for Claire? And I promise you all, I will definitely talk to her about bringing her back to do us a longer session.
Yeah, that would be good. I'd like that.
I don't think there's any final sessions. Zach, do you want to have the final word?
I've said enough already, I think, because I've taken up so many time. Thank you, Claire. I'm sorry I ate into your time. I thought I was doing all right, but I wasn't. My computer crashed and I've just been kicked out, so I missed the last bit as well. Oh dear. But no, thanks for inviting us. It's been a pleasure to listen to Donna, listen to the panelists, and listen to people sharing their stories, and also sort of impart a bit of our expertise in what we do, when hopefully there's a few things that can be taken away by people and get them in. And my last bit I would love to say is pay for your teams to have well-being. Please put it in the morning, not at lunchtime, and get your teams, because it pays back dividends for your business. So that would be my last bit. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think if everybody takes away one thing from this, which is to make time for yourself and for your own well-being, then we can all take ownership of that. And somebody's just put in the chat that they didn't think they got 3 hours to do well-being, but they've actually really enjoyed it and stayed the course. So thank you to everybody, and that is actually so true. I think I started off at 11:30 going, I really haven't got time for a 3-hour wellbeing conference, but actually I'm really glad that I did. Thank you all for coming, and we will, if you want the recording, we will circulate it. And I know Zach has some offers on yoga classes. I've also got something to send out from Donna, so please do fill in the feedback forms, because if we're going to do sessions like this going forward, we need to know what it is you want to do. So thank you to everybody. Donna and Zach are still here, so thank you, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thanks very much. Bye.